Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Another thriller last night for the Winnipeg Jets, grabbing victory from the jaws of defeat against the San Jose Sharks of all teams. Took a while to crack the Sharks netminder, but Josh Morrissey did it in the final minute, and the Jets went on to win in OT, capped off by Mark Scheifele's long-awaited franchise record-setting goal, 329, officially becoming the all-time leading scorer in Jets Thrashers history, passing Ilya Kovalchuk on what was a really fun night down at Canada Life Center. We're going to be all over it. We'll hear the reaction from Scheifele and Josh Morrissey. And, you know, I think we're going to probably have to start off the show with the call from our buddy Paul Edmonds, who absolutely brought it. You could tell Paulie was ready for that one last night, as were all the fans in the building. We'll talk about it. And, you know what, I want to get into more of just Mark Scheifele's development and the last couple seasons, signing the contract, where he is right now as a player, compared to where he was a couple seasons ago, when it certainly seemed like his time in Winnipeg may be nearing an end. It has been an incredible last couple seasons, especially this year for the Winnipeg Jets and Mark Scheifele. And he's a huge reason why the Jets have a very comfortable 9-point lead over the Dallas Stars in the Central Division and in the Western Conference. Hammer's going to come on. We'll talk about Scheifele, more Jets topics, maybe get into a little bit of CFL offseason. And, of course, you know what next week is, folks. Well, yes, Wednesday is our 1,000th show. We're looking forward to that. Yes, next week is our 4th anniversary. But, of course, the main event next week is our extended trade deadline coverage here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. So next Friday, as we've done the last couple of years, we won't wait until 1 o'clock to get going. We'll be going live at 11 a.m., cranking out 4, maybe even 5 hours of programming so you can hang out with us all day. We'll react to all the deals, focus in on the Winnipeg Jets, but pay attention to what is always the busiest day of the year when it comes to trade activity in the National Hockey League. So Dave Pagnotta is going to jump on from the 4th period. His new trade board is up. We'll see what he's hearing about the Winnipeg Jets and go around the league with both players and teams that are in the mix as we get closer to the gun at 2 p.m. Central Time on Friday, March the 7th. And later on today, we're going to speak with Ken Bentley from the University of Manitoba women's volleyball team. Maybe the only team hotter than the Jets right now is Ken's squad, winners of 14 in a row, number 2 in the country, hosting nationals in a couple weeks, and with some playoff action coming up this week at the Investors Group Athletic Center. So it should be a busy one. Nice to see everyone here right out of the gate to talk about another Big Jet win. 10 in a row. Speaking of franchise records, no Winnipeg NHL team, this franchise, the previous franchise, has ever won 10 in a row. And as I said yesterday, I just want to be able to pull up the standings today and look in that last column for the past 10, and for the first time ever, be able to see 10, 0, and 0. And that's where the Winnipeg Jets are right now. We will dive into it. We'll get Michael Remis in here in just a minute. Do want to thank all the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day. Of course, our friends at Coolbet Canada just had a blast with Dustin Nielsen in the lock shop. You can join us before Winnipeg Sports Talk, noon every day, over on the Edmonton Sports Talk channel. Of course, want to thank Princess Auto. Actually saw some of my friends from Princess Auto at the game last night, having a good time. Also, Wallace & Wallace, fansfirst.ca, Little Brown Jug, F Apparel, the Winnipeg Jets, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, Manitoba Battery, Rollies Transfer, St. Vital Dental, shout out to Dr. Terry and the gang, and of course, Canadian Club. Looking forward to seeing many of you for our special Whiskey Fest event Thursday night, Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame, when we'll be doing the Maker's Mark Masterclass and watching Winnipeg and the Nashville Predators. And a big shout out to our friends at the HSC Foundation, continuing their Fund a Need campaign to support new equipment for the emergency services at the HSC. As I said, welcome to everybody in chat. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already, and make sure you press that subscribe button and help us grow the channel. And welcome to Michael Remis. Reem, what's up?
I mean, feeling good. Snow's melting. The Jets are on a 10-game heater. We got a new franchise leader and a goal scored. Another comeback win. Back-to-back games, down a goal in the final minute. Find a way to get the 2 points. Pretty incredible. Josh Morrissey playing fantastic after missing the final of the Four Nations face-off. I mean, got a Vezina Trophy goaltender. The team's in first place. Hard not to feel good here on a Tuesday, Hustler.
Yeah, no, you are right. It is gorgeous outside right now, which has been a long time coming after a really rough stretch through January and February. And dare I say, it's not spring yet, but we're starting to think spring in and around here. We're starting to think playoffs for the Winnipeg Jets, and we're certainly focusing on the trade deadline as we will with Dave Pagnotta coming up. But we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Mark Scheifele today for obvious reasons. But Reem, you brought up Josh Morrissey. My God, the game he had last night, considering the state he was in to have to miss the final of the Four Nations last week, was simply incredible. And he was out there. What was the final numbers? He was out there for 7 minutes, over 7 minutes of the last final 11 minutes for the Winnipeg Jets as they pushed to tie the game. And guess who in the final minute with one of those absolute lasers that he's dropped a few times this year, finally beating the Sharks netminder, who was both good and fortunate last night as the Jets doubled the Sharks in shots, but it took all of 59 and a half minutes to finally beat him.
Yeah, Dmitry Filipovich noting on X-Hus that Morrissey played 7:52 of the final 11:23. Scott O'Neill.
So that's almost 8 minutes. So he was off for all of 3:40 of the last basically 12 minutes of the game. Yeah, that is insane.
Scott O'Neill noting that it was tough to get him off the ice. You look at his shift lengths there. Overtime one, 1:33. The one where they tied it, 2:02. 136, 141. So Josh Morrissey was definitely giving her in the last 11 minutes there of that third period, and it paid off. They tied the game, and they had definitely generated some great looks, especially early on. That I know you had Ehlers Perfetti. They were certainly buzzing. Nemestikov had chances early, but Vitek Vanacek, you look at his season numbers, not great. But hey, when teams are playing the Winnipeg Jets, they bring their A game, and it was on the power play where Eklund, I mean, what a shot. And this Macklin Celebrini, I mean, talk about him.
He's a stud.
His skating, his passing, his all-around game is excellent. And he just put it on a tee there for Eklund and wired it, opposite, not short side, but far side corner. And the Jets were down. It was only one. And I mean, not a ton of shots generated by San Jose all game. You knew it was going to be a light workload for Hellebuck, 16 saves, Huss, and they just kept plugging away. And the Jets, they don't quit until the whistle goes. And you saw it now 2 games in a row, tying it in the final, minute of the game and winning in overtime last night. 17 saves for Hellebuck, tying it in the final minute of the game, and then winning in overtime. And Mark Scheifele was also on for a lengthy shift, scoring the winner and becoming the franchise leading goal scorer. Their 10th game win streak. I mean, they're number 1 in the standings. It's incredible. Sean Reynolds was calling this a fairy tale season so far for the Jets, and I kind of agree. Every player having a career year. The team's in first. Couldn't be going any better. It's incredible.
Why not question of the day for not Autocorp but Waverly and McGillivray? Can anybody remember the last time the Jets lost a game? Do you remember when the last time they lost?
I do know the last time. It was when they lost to Utah, and Scott O'Neill was all pissed off at them, and they never lost again. It's like Shoresy, the show, where he's like, we're never going to lose again after he got all mad, and they've gone on a 10-game win streak here. It's crazy. I thought
January 20th, the last time the Winnipeg Jets lost a game. 2 more games in February, and obviously there was this 2-week break in the middle of it, but it's been a long time, and winning has become a habit for the Winnipeg Jets, and to your point, finding ways to win. Like, I mean, you kind of felt like this was like they were going to get one by Vanacek at some point last night. But I still think the way that they beat the Blues on Saturday night, having to, spend 4 of the last 5 minutes of the game killing penalties and giving up one, and then finding a way to win with Gabe Vilardi with the tip in and then winning in the shootout was one of those games you can really build off of. And Remis, even last night, I mean, I never felt like this was going to go the wrong way. And maybe it was because of Saturday. I'm like, well, listen, this team's at home with a full period to play against San Jose. Much better situation than they were in with a minute to go in St. Louis, and they got it done. And lo and behold, they did. Yeah, you mentioned, listen, Perfetti and Ehlers I thought were great last night. They had a ton of high danger chances. Vanacek was just, too good at times. We did get the plus 105 on the Mark Scheifele anytime goal. It just seemed to be destiny that he would hit that one at home. And I know you were asking, well, how the heck do you get any value on the Jets as a minus 500 favorite? You know what you do? You wait till the second TV timeout of the third period to live bet them at plus 175 and hope they do it again. And that is exactly what the Jets did last night. It was a nice night last night. It was the Black History Month game. Very cool to see Pokey Reddick get welcomed. I see the GFL is here. Gregory was there last night. Great anthem as well by the women of the One Voice group that did it. Now, I know people were wondering about booing and whatnot. There was some at the start. I was in the lower bowl. It really seemed like it was just at the beginning, and then it wasn't much. I think depending on where you were, you might have heard a little bit more. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be something, especially with what's happening with these latest developments on the tariffs, that might be a little bit more commonplace over the next little while. But overall, both around the rink, a real fun night. And then, of course, the bottom line, the Jets getting the big 2 points. And, of course, it was the Amazon game last night. Remis, did you see my Amazon debut at the beginning of the broadcast?
I did. You texted me. Did you see me? And I had it on. I love how they show the warm-ups. It starts like an hour before the game. The cameras, I think, are amazing. And so, I had it on, and yeah, Adnan Virk, I love how they set up downstairs as well. Him and Blake at the desk. Pretty cool that they brought in Pokey Reddick and Ray Neufeld for an in-person interview. I mean, they really try to serve the city that they're attending. They're not just talking about the Leafs us during intermissions, if you know what I'm saying. So here you are back here. And you're like, did you see me? You're in the shadows here. You're smiling behind this kid with the sign. But there is some good people watching when they do have this. Some people, sit there, eat popcorn. They give the popcorn away in the lounge there. But there you are, lurking in the shadows, getting your shot in behind.
A bit of a scrum lurker there. The funny thing was I had just popped down and I was saying hi to Adnan and thanking him for coming on the show yesterday. And holy smokes, I talked to him a couple times before when I was doing the work in Calgary with Sportsnet. And my pal Pat Steinberg, and he was a regular on Pat's show when I was on. But I'd never met him in person. And he is honestly the most genuine, one of the most genuine dudes I've met. I just had a great conversation, was really interested in what we're doing here with Winnipeg Sports Talk, and asked a bunch of questions about that, and then, had a lot of time for fans that popped by to say hi. But I just happened to be there as the broadcast was starting. I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'll just poke my head over here and see what, and then sure enough, the phone went off. So everyone was having some fun giving me, and I see Mike Wynn laughing there. I was joking. I was basically pulling a Mike Wynn Carter Chen move, because I was joking that it was like minus 2,500 that one of those two guys would be on the tube last night. I don't know if they got on it, but I did. So early in the game. That being said, a lot of positive comments for the Amazon broadcast. And Scardy, by the way, Scardy, I saw your comment yesterday, and I knew I had been butchering your name and calling you Sklardy every single time I shouted you out. I did not realize that until you mentioned yesterday. So, Scardy, nice work. And yes, Amazon Prime drone shots of the city are amazing. Reem, you know what? Listen, I want to get into hearing from Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele, but let's just play this goal last night. Often people are watching TV, you might not catch the radio broadcast, but man, does our guy Paul Edmonds do a great job every single game. But this was a real special goal in franchise history. Paulie was locked and loaded for it. This is the way it sounded last night on OB when Mark Scheifele won the game in overtime and officially became Jets 2.0's greatest goal scorer.
Here's Connor, didn't shoot the puck in the backhand, swings away, put it back into where the high slot for Scheifele. Scheifele on his forehand, he didn't like the read and curls away again. Now he'll drop it for Nikolai Ehlers, shooting, stop, rebound, they score! Mark Scheifele, it's goal number 329, a Winnipeg Jets franchise record. The team's first ever draft pick is now first overall in goal scoring. And it's a game winner for Scheifele. 2-1, the final score in overtime tonight.
So Paulie bringing it on OB. Of course, John Forsland with the call. And as Adnan mentioned, our old pal Shane Knighty, the sheriff in between the benches, back in his home province last night. So, Remo, it just keeps going from good to better for the Winnipeg Jets. Now 10 in a row, clearly with their sights set now on the Western Conference #1 seed, the Central Division title, and dare I say a President's Trophy. Now, I was talking about this after the game last night. and let me put this. I know I kind of joked around with the why not question of the day before, but I'll put this out to folks right now. Your thoughts on the President's Trophy? Would it mean something to you for the Jets to win that trophy? As I said, to me, I think the goal has to be first place in the West, because that will get you the 1-8 matchup. I mean, a far better first round than I think you'd get in any other position, which I think is important for the Jets to sort of get off to a good start in the playoffs and move past last year. Get a round in and then, be ready for the second round, which is probably going to be the Dallas Stars, who are, one of a handful of the best teams in the National Hockey League. I mean, nothing's going to be easy. But, as I talked with some friends after the game about it last night, with what the team has earned so far this season, I'm here, I want all the banners. I'm still sort of sour of 2019, the way they, went in reverse in the second half of the season, blew what was going to be their first ever Central Division title. And I'll tell you what, if they're the best damn team through 82 games, that's something to celebrate. I'm here for a President's Trophy banner. Now, good things come in threes. The banner that everyone wants is the one that comes at the end of June, and there's a long ways to go and a lot of work to be done. But I do hear some people going, oh, the President's Trophy never wins the cup. That's not true, first of all. But you know what? There is really something to celebrate about this amazing season the Jets have had. And you know what? Both for the division and the league, I think it would be amazing if the team would be able to do that. Not that it's going to change. I mean, it won't help or hurt your chances in the playoffs other than you'll get home ice throughout the entire Stanley Cup playoffs. That means something, especially playing in a barn like ours come playoff time. And you know what? It's fun to even be able to have these conversations right now, Reem, when you see the way this team has played and continues to make believers out of more of their fans.
Yeah, I want to see a Central Division better. I'm still rattled about the 2019 collapse, that it was not there, and they've had great first halves. We haven't seen them sustain. I think it would be a tremendous accomplishment, and you would have something that's in the arena forever saying, hey, we did this. We were the best team in the league. The Winnipeg Jets would be the we in that case. They were the best team in the league, for that season. And again, a tremendous accomplishment of all the teams. I mean, number one also has, we've talked about the playoffs before. One, you get home ice throughout the playoffs, which would be huge. We've seen how good the Jets are at home this year, 23-5-3. That's pretty good. And then as well for a playoff matchup, I mean, you'd be playing the second wild card, which I think is an even more important. It would be Vancouver right now. He's got 63 points. So, I mean, a number of reasons why I think it would be great. I'm not here for it's a curse. I'm not here for that. I don't
know why you wouldn't. Like someone said, I do not want the President's Trophy. Like that, I don't really understand that. Like that makes it sound as if there's some sort of built-in jinx. Oh, if you're the best team in the regular season, there's no way you can win in the playoffs. I don't buy into that at all. And you know what? I think that if this team is able to earn that, as I said, it should be celebrated. But that happens next year. I mean, it is all about the playoffs. There is only one Stanley Cup champion. But the fact that it is so hard to win that trophy, there are a bunch of other things that teams accomplish that I think, shouldn't just be pushed to the side and go, who cares about it? I mean, a lot of people do. And I'll tell you what, as someone that, has season tickets and is going to every one of these games, this has been a magical season so far. I mean, you mentioned Randy calling it sort of a fairy tale type season. And it really has been. And, the play of a guy like Scheifele this year has been a big part of it. In a lot of ways, Remis, you look at last night's game and the cornerstones of the franchise, front and center again, on a big milestone win and milestone goal. Mark Scheifele signed to that 7-year extension, the first ever draft pick of the club. Connor Hellebuck, the Rock, arguably the greatest Jet of the, not sure that there really is an argument considering his individual hardware of the 2.0 era in net on the 7-year extension. And Josh Morrissey, once again, showing that he is amongst the elite of defenders in the entire NHL, on his 8-year contract that has 3 more years on it. I mean, those guys are so important to this team, and they really are leading the way last night. Just before we get to the clips from last night of Morrissey and Scheifele, and I know we're going to be focusing on Scheifele and the big goal. Josh Morrissey looked so good last night, and I'm sure you saw this, Remis. There was a time in overtime, a couple times during the game, but particularly in overtime, Morrissey was essentially skating sideways. Like it was borderline showing off. It was that good. And I remember saying, I was sitting with my pal Gerald at the game, and I'm like, you know what? I'll pay to see that. He has just continued to raise his level of play. Obviously scored that incredible goal late to get the team to overtime. But like on a nightly basis, he's borderline showing off. He's been that good. And like everyone seemed to be talking about that little detail that I don't think many people miss just because it looks so damn cool.
Yeah, he's on Team Canada. He's one of the top defensemen in the league and really showed it last night. I mean, for him to come back in his first game after the Four Nations, after missing that game, we don't really know what he went through, but it had to be a lot for him to miss that game. Huss, to look the way he did last night shows, hey, I think he definitely, went up another level playing with those elite players at the Four Nations. And yeah, there's a lot of room out there in overtime. And you saw, Mark Scheifele, be on for an extended shift and score. Nikolai Ehlers, skating up and down the ice, longtime Winnipeg Jet as well. Kyle Connor and Josh Morrissey. So everyone pulling on their own rope. But yeah, I mean, Josh Morrissey was, you saw what he meant to this team, us. And we talked a lot about Dylan Sandberg, the hole that he had in the lineup when he was out. But we saw what the team looked like without Josh Morrissey briefly on Saturday. He brings a skill level that, they don't have another number one. It's just him. And really, really impressive, how he's grown. Because the narrative around Josh Morrissey, a couple years ago was not, this is one of the best defensemen in the league. And he's really found a way. Rick Bowness said,
shown everyone that he is straight up. Period. End of story.
Yeah, he showed everyone, and it's been awesome to watch. And these guys have been part of the Winnipeg Jets for a long time, and we haven't really got too much into Mark Scheifele, but now that he's the franchise leader, there was some nice looking back, especially with Shane Knighty being on the broadcast showing that first goal against Toronto, which I remember showing when he got drafted and put on the NHL jersey, and there he was after the game. Holding the puck, said send it straight to Kitchener for 329 goals, franchise leading record. Pretty, really impressive.
I know he's been asked this, but I can't remember what the answer is. Do you know where the infamous NHL jersey is?
He was on the old station. I think I told you to ask him or something. That's my favorite jersey because I don't think you've ever seen one like that. Like even
I mean, it's the one of one.
Yeah, there's not another one like that out there. So I would like to see it on display.
I was just about to say, like, that should either be in the Jets Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Or dare I say, if Mark can continue this incredible career that he's having and has some even higher accolades, that needs to be part of wherever the Mark Scheifele display is at the end of his career. Let's hear a little bit of feedback from what was a thrilling overtime win last night for the Winnipeg Jets. Scott Arniel talked about never in doubt, another comeback win for his team, scoring with an empty net in the final minute to tie it.
Right. Yeah, that was just sticking with it. Trying to, I mean, I've said to you before, it may take the first period and you win a hockey game, or it may go right to the end like it did again tonight. It's just staying with it. But we had so many chances. We had so many good looks and crossbars, and VTech made some big stops. And but at the end of the day, we hung in there and we just stayed with it and found a way, and with traffic and him shooting it from that bad angle, and found its way in.
Well, speaking of finding its way in, it was Josh Morrissey who was the hero first to get the team to overtime. Scott Arniel talked about his all-star defenseman and, of course, getting him back into the lineup after missing the game on Saturday.
Yeah, he's a tough guy to pull off the ice. He wants to be in those situations. We spent a lot of time just in their end, so it wasn't like you had to race up and down the ice. And don't always ever want to, get yourself caught in that. But at the end of the day, that's one thing about Josh. His recovery is amazing. And, he said this morning he felt like he was 100%. And so, don't always want to go quite that high with the minutes, but certainly paid off.
Yeah, well, he was out there pretty much the last half of the third period. And it finally paid off for the Jets. They got it to overtime. And then it was Mark Scheifele time to become the all-time franchise leading goal scorer, and doing it in overtime, as we heard from Paul Edmonds. Here's Scheifele on setting that franchise record and, of course, winning the game. And, of course, Josh tying it to get the opportunity to set the record in OT.
The real record you're chasing is the one Dale has, but still must be pretty nice to see your name on top of the franchise list and to do it the way you did it.
Yeah, that was fun. That building was rocking. The goalie stood on his head, all night and made us go 59 minutes and 30 seconds to finally get past him. But obviously that was a big win.
Yeah, and to see Josh step into that shot 2 straight games now that's gone right down to the final minute, I guess what does it say about your group that you can kind of snatch victory from the jaws of defeat like that?
Yeah, we're pretty good 6-on-5, I feel like. But, a lot of really good players. Obviously a fantastic shot by J-Mo. That was a big time goal then, and obviously another big win.
As a friend of his and teammate, knowing what he's been through with obviously missing the final, feel extra good to see Josh get a moment like that?
Oh, for sure. Obviously I talked to him when he wasn't able to go, and I felt absolutely awful. He played so good in that tournament, and for a sickness like that to get you, especially a guy like that, it's got to be really, 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 really bad for him not to play a game. And I know it was really, really, really bad. For him to get that on home ice and to tie that game up, he's amazing.
All right, so there's some high praise for his teammate Josh Morrissey, who got them to overtime before Mark Scheifele became the franchise all-time leading goal scorer. In addition to the personal accolades, that makes it 10 in a row for the Winnipeg Jets. Here's Scheifele on the record 10-game winning streak the team's on.
Yeah, it's weird because it doesn't really feel like it. With a 2-week break in between games, kind of puts a damper on the good feeling. But obviously, a win's a win, and what we've done all year is good or bad. We celebrate tonight, and come tomorrow we're looking on to the next game. So just want to keep going.
Note was the late game dramatics. First time a team is scored in the final minute in back-to-back games and won. Here's what Scheifele had to say about the belief in the room and the ability to stay in the game and get these comeback wins.
we got fantastic players. That's about it. We have amazing players, and when you have guys in the right spots, and you wear a team like we did tonight, good things are going to happen. We hit a ton of bars, crossbars, everything, and we finally got one to crack, and just sometimes it takes a little longer than you'd hope.
All right, and one more for Scheifele. Just on the milestone last night, he was asked on what a 14-year-old Mark would think of being an NHL franchise goal-scoring leader.
He wouldn't believe it, that's for sure. A kid from Kitchener, playing with the Kitchener Dutchman way back when I was 16. Never would have believed you. But all you got to do is trust in God's plan, and that's what I've done. And obviously, I'm very, very grateful for my family. The Winnipeg Jets organization. They were the ones that trusted in me, and I just want to keep on playing well for them.
Well, he's had a hell of a season so far and will be a big piece of this team moving forward into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, Josh Morrissey is the leader on the back end. He's scored late in the game to get the game to overtime. Here's Morrissey on the team's ability to find a way to come back the way they did last night.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to make it routine, that's for sure. But, there's no quit in our team. And, Arnie came in after the second and just said, sometimes it's, it takes 59 minutes. You just got to stick with it. So, whether that's tonight or in the playoffs or whatever it is, I mean, we just got to hang in there, and that's what we did. And, we did a lot of good things. Their goalie played well. They were defending really hard, and, like we said, it took a while, but we finally cracked it, and great to get the win there.
All right, Josh Morrissey on the comeback win. He, of course, scored the tying goal and then was part of the big goal by Mark in overtime. Here he is on the late game heroics from him, and then being a part of that franchise record setter.
Just hoped it didn't miss the net and I'd have to go back and get it again. But, no, it was good. I mean, at the end of the game, want to be out there, and I guess that's why you skate lines and do all that stuff to be in shape for those moments.
Right. Josh, after the disappointment of not being able to play last Thursday, what does it feel like to be able to be part of your great friend and teammate's record-setting goal?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about that goal probably more than him. I envision it just, giving him a backdoor tap in and whatnot, and obviously for him to get that OT winner and get the record, I mean, what an accomplishment. What he means to the city, this organization, from basically day one that the Jets came back. I mean, the first pick and, everything he's done in this community for the fan base. I mean, you saw the fans embrace him, and, it's special. So, he's one of my best friends, and, just so happy for him. He works so hard, and that's a lot of goals, so it's pretty impressive.
All right, Josh Morrissey from last night. Now, the one thing the San Jose Sharks did a very good job of was being really aggressive on the points and not giving the Jets a lot of clear lanes to shoot through, and they blocked a ton of shots. Morrissey talked about just the need to be a little more selective in their shot selection and the job San Jose was of pressuring and getting in the way of shots from the point.
Obviously they were committed to blocking shots, and there's always the element where you can do a little better job of finding a lane or, getting in front of the net. But, teams are going to be committed to that in the playoffs, right? You're going to see that. So I thought we generated enough good looks, in my opinion, to produce more than just one that, in the 60-minute game, had a couple of posts. So sometimes that's how it's going to look. And, when a team's kind of stuck in their own half of the ice like that a lot of the game, I think you see those block shot numbers kind of climb up there.
And one more from Morrissey. This is just on the team. And again, this is maybe an extension of the team's unbelievably successful power play. But he talked about the success this team's having at 6-on-5 when they need it most.
Yeah, I mean, 6-on-5 is desperation. Obviously, there's positions, and we have a plan going out there of, how we would like to set up in zone and throughout the neutral zone and stuff like that, and on break-ins. But a lot of times, all that kind of goes out the window, and it's just about a little extra effort or compete or, a great play defensively that can lead the other way, keep in, all those same things that you see in hockey when teams score 6 on 5. It's usually a culmination of a few big plays that and one battle. So I think the mindset of our group this year has always been right. In those situations, whether it's power play, it's been an emphasis for us to compete and out-compete the penalty kill, and 6 on 5, that's the same thing. So, not an ideal situation when we have to tag up, but boys did a great job of closing it off and, getting it back so we can go the other way.
All right, so there's Josh Morrissey, one of the heroes last night. Jets come back and beat the Sharks 2-1 in overtime, making it 10 in a row. And Mark Scheifele sets the all-time franchise goal-scoring lead, or achieves that with 329 with that goal. Jeff Hamilton will come on, talk more about Scheifele's era here in Winnipeg, and, of course, look ahead to the trade deadline. Before we do that, though, we are going to have Dave Pagnotta come on and kind of dive into his latest trade board. I know everyone is going to be looking forward to that. Going to be a pretty exciting 9 days heading into our extended show next Friday, March the 7th. But before that, congratulations again to Mark, who made the very generous bid to win the HSC Foundation auction to head out to the world-class, beautiful Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge for 3 days of fishing with yours truly as host. Really looking forward to that, Mark. Thanks again for the support. Folks, if you do want to continue to support the Fund a Need campaign right now, there's a link in the description here. You can check out HSC Foundation online or on socials for a link. Any donation of $25 or more, you get a tax receipt for it. And all the funds go to help purchase new, very important equipment for our emergency rooms. As you can see right there is where you do it. Link in the description. Every dollar we can help raise for the HSC Foundation emergency room will help in big ways for people that need it the most at Manitoba and Winnipeg's largest hospital. We've got 5 tickets left for the whiskey tasting on Thursday. If you've missed it, we did this last year to great success. We're doing it again on Thursday at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. This year, it is the Maker's Mark Masterclass with Micah Dew, who's going to be coming in and teaching us. We learned so much about whiskeys last year. It was so neat. We're going to be doing the same with bourbons this year. There is a link in the description here. Remis, maybe if you want to throw it into the chat. If you want to join us, we'll have all these amazing whiskeys. I know last year they had a beautiful little charcuterie board for everybody, which was phenomenal from DeLuca's. And, of course, we'll have the Jets Preds up on the big screen watching that at the same time. So get those tickets before they're gone, because that is capacity. There's 5 tickets left right now. Would love to see you on Thursday with us down at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. All right, before we bring Pagnotta, shout out to our friends at Rolly's Transfer. Family owned and operated for over 60 years here, and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. Folks, if you have a move in the upcoming months planned, head on over to Rollies.com, and top right corner, you'll see that request an estimate feature. Make sure you pop in WST into the promo code for a special discount for moving services and moving supplies for Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners. And then let them know where you are moving, when you're planning on moving, and what needs to be moved. And the friendly staff at Rollies will turn it around quick with a great quote for you, get you locked in to get the white glove treatment for your move that Rollies is famous for. Proud sponsors of Winnipeg Sports Talk. For your next move, make it Rollies. Find out more or request an estimate today at Rollies.com. Man, I was at St. Vital Dental Center this morning, seeing my pal Dr. Terry and his great staff. What a great spot, too. And, obviously they've got customers of all ages from 6 months to 95 plus. And they do it all there. You can also find out if you want more information on dental implants, which is not something that, every dental spot might be able to do. certainly they can roll you through options for that. But regular care, cleanings, root canals, fillings, they do it all. Beautiful office, amazing staff, and convenient located at 167 St. Anne's with free parking right behind the building. Take it from me. If you've left it a little too long, don't do that anymore. Give Dr. Terry a call and the gang at St. Vital Dental Center. Get locked in. You will thank me later. And a big thanks to St. Vital Dental Center for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And hey, it's warming up, and that's a good thing because maybe we're a little bit closer to talking about Manitoba Battery's offerings for things like boats and ATVs and dirt bikes and all the fun stuff in the summer. But until then, Manitoba Battery is still your number one spot for batteries for literally everything, especially your car and truck to get you through the tough Manitoba winter. And one thing you can count on every day of the year is the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores, shopping local, and with the best customer service. As Manitoba Battery will deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Pop by and see them. The original location on Logan Avenue, the new location on Dovercourt Drive. And you can also simply just order online at manitobabattery.com and they'll deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter. All right. Thanks to Manitoba Battery for their support. Let's welcome in Dave Pagnotta of the fourth period, and then it'll be hammer time with Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Dave, what's going on? Have you settled down a little bit from the crazy last couple of weeks that for most people was a break? For some like yourself, far from it.
Yeah, not a chance. No break at all. This was like Stanley Cup final schedule, basically. Just go. I got back Friday, and then there was a Leaf game Saturday, so I had to go to that. Sunday I slept. I was happy about that. I actually caught up a little bit and was able to rest. But that was exceeded, I think, everybody's expectations. Even people at the league. I spoke to Steve Mayer and Bill Daly and a few others, and even they were blown away by how crazy this was. They didn't expect that level. I don't think anybody expected what happened on the Saturday game between Canada and the U.S. in the first 9 seconds. So like that just blew everything out of the water. And the game before that, the Sweden-Finland game, was amazing. But it gets overshadowed by what happened in that, and then just the hype and everything that led into the final. That was a wild, I think I was gone for 12 days. That was a really like nonstop pedal to the metal 12 days. I'm still kind of in recovery mode.
I wasn't in Montreal, but the week in Boston, I'll never forget it. The atmosphere, even for the early games in the week, and then the final was something, especially as Canadians. I mean, that was like, it kind of did have some 72 Summit Series vibes, just with everything else around it. Yeah. It felt like a game that Canada absolutely had to have, and they did. But to your point about the overall event, I mean, I couldn't wait for this tournament all year long. I mean, it had just been so damn long, and we'd never really seen most of these young players on the States or Canada truly playing a best on best, because a bunch of them were on Team North America last time. But I am with you. I mean, you want to talk about over-delivering, and I had high expectations to begin with. The reaction in the United States, I'm not sure anyone was ready for that. And the television numbers speak to it for the final. Like, when was the last time, or has the NHL and hockey ever been as prominent? And you look at where they were on the calendar too. Football had just ended. It was a real slow time. I mean, this seemed like the perfect storm for the National Hockey League.
And comboing the fact that the circus of whatever the hell the NBA All-Star Weekend festivities are, it just propelled it even more. Like, it was, again, nobody anticipated that level of attention. And you're right, with you always try to separate sports from just life, right? This is sports. It's an escape. You go to have a good time. You want to get away from all the other nonsense that's out there. But there was so much on the political side that it made these games that much more impactful and put that many more eyeballs onto it. You're right. It was a perfect storm of everything. And I don't know if you can ever replicate that. Like, there's talk now, the league's wondering, well, what the hell do we do? Do we make this on the calendar every 4 years? in between, Olympics and World Cup, or do we just they have to figure out what to do here, because there's an All-Star game next year in New York, and then everybody leaves to go to Milan, or not everybody, but whoever's on the Olympic teams are going to leave to go to Milan for the Olympics. And then what do we do the following season in between Olympics and World Cup? Like, that's all the league has to, that they got to figure this out now. And they've got to now hype the crap out of All-Star weekend that the Islanders are hosting, because it was an amazing All-Star weekend in Toronto. Then you have this Four Nations, which blew everything out of the water. A little bit of pressure now on the league to keep it at this level.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I don't know what they could possibly do to even come close to be. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the All-Star games in all the sports are going down like this. I mean, maybe with the exception of the baseball All-Star game.
Right.
I mean, the NFL's essentially done away with the Pro Bowl. I mean, it's now flag football and a bunch of things. I mean, the NBA, as we've discussed, they took their licks on the weekend. I mean, I just don't know how you. I mean, listen, I know it's in the plans and they'll go for it, but it'll just be so small compared to what we just saw, and it all comes down to the passion of the players and the buy-in and how invested they were. And that's not happening in a bunch of 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 playing for their divisions or whatever it's going to be.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like they need to figure this out, because the hype train, it's still alive and well, especially in the U.S. after Four Nations, and now there's the Stadium Series game, which the league hasn't really promoted much.
I did not know it was happening until I saw something on Twitter that they'd sold 90,000 seats for the Horseshoe. No idea.
Yeah. So yeah, you've got. I'm going to that, but you've got Columbus versus Detroit, and ESPN's got the game, and they're starting to hype it up this week now. They just released the graphics of everything this morning. The league did, so maybe that builds up hype, and then you've got trade deadline, and then in 10 days, and then you've got the playoff rush, and then playoffs. Like, the league has to carry this momentum going, and that's going to be maybe a challenge. It just depends on how much they hype it up and how much the broadcasts, especially in the U.S., both Turner and Disney, really just promote the crap out of this. They're going to have to, and the league's going to have to push that. I hope they do. But again, you just think back on those games at Four Nations, and you're just going, you're almost in awe.
It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, period. No. I mean, I will argue that was the game played at the highest level we've ever seen, with the best players that we've ever seen, and it certainly gets us ready for next year in the Olympic Games.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, from an international perspective, that hype train, even though it's IOC, it's not NHL, that hype train is going to be huge, because everybody's going to want a rematch.
Oh, absolutely. And we want to see it, regardless of which side of the fence you're on. You want to see those two teams go at it again. You mentioned the trade deadline. I mean, that is now where we're all focusing on. Folks, if you go to thefourthperiod.com, Dave's latest is just out, the 2025 Trade Watch List 4.0. We'll get to some particular players, but I have to note that Winnipeg is one of the teams interested in quite a few players on the list. How would you categorize where the Jets are? What have you been hearing about what Kevin Cheveldayo's been up to? And what should Jet fans expect heading into next week?
Well, let me just put a asterisk / sidebar just so I have people, because I get people on social going, and they're not adding all these players. Obviously they're not. Yeah. But just to clarify, they're interested in all these players. They're trying to get one, maybe two of them. So, you've got to spread yourself out there. And this is all the teams trying to, they want to add this player, that player, this player. They're going to get one, but they have their options. Now, we're hearing two different things with respect to Winnipeg. And it's the normal, let's go out there, you're a top-tier team, let's go get a depth addition. Never have too many defensemen. You can never have too many two-way style bottom six guys when it comes to a playoff run. So they're looking at those options. But what I started to hear the last few days was they're also toying with the idea of going after a bigger fish and somebody that may even have term on their contract. And Barlow's name is out there now as a piece that they may dangle, or are dangling, I should say, to get a bigger fish. No guarantees they do it. And this may translate into a search come the offseason to add somebody in a top 6 kind of role, or that caliber player. But it sounds like over the last few days, going into the weekend and into this week, that they started to poke around to see what other options there may be versus exclusively the depth rental market. So certainly something to keep tabs on. And they're going to approach others like Brock Nelson, for example, would certainly be a hell of an ad for any team. But what's the price, and when are the Islanders willing to explore that realistically, as an example? So they're casting a wide net, but it looks like they're also exploring the possibility of adding a piece that may not necessarily be a rental, and that may cost a little extra. And Colby Barlow is a guy that's out there.
Dave, if they were taking that big swing on the player that you just mentioned, is it more likely a forward, do you think, or a defenseman that might be around for longer than this season?
I think it's either or. I don't think they're exclusively looking in one direction. I think they want to just, again, understand what's out there, what's potentially out there, because there are players with term that are being discussed. Like Jamie Alexiak, for example, has another year left on his contract in Seattle. The Kraken are willing to listen on him, and Oliver Bjorkstrand and Jared McCann, who has, I think, 2 more years, maybe 3, but at least 2 more years left on his contract after this season. And he's a good offensive piece. He's since he was taken in the expansion draft, his offensive game has blossomed. So they're willing to listen on him. So I think teams like Winnipeg are looking. They want to see what's out there, what's available. And if it's a defenseman that falls into their lap, beautiful. If it's a forward, also great. Offense is certainly there with the Jets. So maybe you pivot to defense. But again, it's all going to be, what are the opportunity costs of improving my roster, not just asset-wise, but is this the right player who's going to fit into this group? That's the other thing the Jets are considering. Certainly, they don't want to mess too much with the mojo of what they got. So if it's a good complementary piece from a locker room perspective, they're more inclined to go that route on a particular player than just a star name, for example.
Dave, I guess it was a month ago or so, I remember you coming on right after the insane Friday night bombshell of the Rantanen-Necas deal. We were talking about it, what this means moving forward. And now Mikko Rantanen's at number 1 on your list. What's going on?
Yes. Yeah, he is. Because his future's up in the air. They offered him a contract over the weekend, little over $100 million, and he's got to decide what he wants to do. From Carolina's perspective, they're not actively trying to get rid of him. But they're listening. And if they feel that they don't have an opportunity to sign him, you go in one or two directions. You either keep him as your own rental because you effectively traded for him for that reason, or you try to move him and generate assets to recoup what you gave up. I don't know if there's a Marty Necas out there as part of a deal that they can get back, but they will explore it if closer to the deadline, if they feel they don't have a shot at signing him. And it's not dollar-wise. They're willing to spend the money, although I heard the offer was a little less than I was initially told. I was told it was a little over $13 million a year. I think it's hovering around 13. It might just be a little bit below, which I don't think gets it done personally. I think you're going to have to creep into the $13 million per year range in order to get him signed. But I don't get the sense that that's going to be a deterrent for Carolina. Really, it's going to come down to what Mikko wants. And is he willing to commit now? And if he's not, would he be willing to, regardless, commit to Raleigh? And over Four Nations, there was, talking to people around the league, different teams and whatnot, there were a lot of people doubting his willingness to do that. So we'll see. Obviously, he's the one that's going to make the call, not his agent and not Carolina. It's going to be him. But if Carolina really understands or comes to the conclusion that he's just not going to sign there, they're going to explore the options and take more of those calls.
Dave, going down the list, you've got a couple of the young defensemen on the Buffalo Sabres, Bowen Byram and Owen Power together. I mean, the Jets, one of the teams, I mean, I would imagine most teams would be somewhat interested in talented young defensemen like that. And of course, Dylan Cousins is number 3 on the list. Fill us in on what is Kevin Adams up to right now? What's going on in and around the Buffalo Sabres? And who's most likely to be on the move from a club that certainly needs some a significant overhaul?
Yes. Yeah, they do. They want to shake things up. And it may not necessarily be over these next 10 days. They may continue these conversations and have them carry out into the summer. Cousins has been out there all season. They've been looking at that. They've made it known. I get the sense he's not against a change of scenery, but they're not just going to move him for the sake of it. They've got him signed long-term. They don't have to do it, but they certainly want to change things up, change the core of this team, because obviously it's not working. They've got good pieces, Alex Tuch and Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, but the other pieces just aren't gelling, and clearly not, excuse me, not putting them over the top. So can they move out Cousins and get another center? Can they move out one of Byram or Power and address up front? I don't think they necessarily have to get a stud defenseman back if they move one of those guys. And the reason we have them is their co-number, I can't remember what number they're at, but they're on there as a tandem. So it's one or the other by the sounds of things that Buffalo, would be willing to entertain. But the sense I get is they wanted the upgrades that they want are up front. So we'll see what they end up doing. These are hockey-type trades that at the end of the day will get made if they do get made. They have no interest in moving these guys for future assets. It's all about getting deals that make sense for young NHL caliber talent that are going to help push this team back into playoff contention for the first time since Pagula's on the team.
Thank God for the Bills, for the long-suffering fans of Buffalo.
Yeah.
In the West right now, it sort of seems like it's Vancouver and Calgary battling for that last spot. I mean, I guess Utah's somewhat in the mix, and St. Louis if they got hot. The East is totally different, though. You got Detroit and Ottawa in the wild card spots, and there are Columbus, Boston, Rangers, Islanders, Canadians, all within 5 points.
Yeah.
What does the sandwich nature of the Eastern wildcard race do to the deadline? Those are often teams that you would think would be sellers, but like we've seen before with the Islanders, sometimes you think they're out and they're actually buying right now. I mean, what do you make of the landscape of the East and how that might affect deals?
Well, I think teams like Philly and like Philly's interesting because they don't have pieces to sell off necessarily. Because they have nobody on an expiring contract who's a UFA, I think, other than Eric Johnson. But they're still in their rebuild mode, or at least mindset, I should say. So they're open to listing still on Ristolainen, still on Scott Lawton, a couple other players. But they want to still follow the types of moves they made when they made the Calgary trade, when they moved out Frost and Farabee. So they're looking. But they're in that different ballpark. Whereas a team like Montreal, where they've got 5 pending unrestricted free agents, they're selling off. Even if they keep going into this path, and they get on another early January type heater and get into a playoff spot, they're still looking at and willing to move guys like Armia and Savard and Evans and Dvorak, and I think Pizzetta is the other guy. So they're there in the race, but they're realistic about their positioning and where they're at as well. So they're willing to, be that seller and then just see what happens. I think Anaheim, number of years ago, Anaheim sold off a bunch of pieces and they ended up making the playoffs. They ended up climbing into a playoff spot. This might be 10, 12 years ago. So similar kind of, if it happens for the Habs or another team, awesome. But they're still in the mindset of kind of selling off their rental pieces. The Islanders, it's Lou. So I don't know. We'll see. He should. And I know the Islander fans are crying for this as well. Sell off Palmieri, sell off Nelson, regain young assets and draft picks. So you can get a first-round pick and a package for Nelson. and then go out in the summer and go spend some money on some quality free agents. That could ultimately be the plan, but Lou's going to probably wait till the 11th hour before making that decision.
The one team I wanted to ask you about is the Ottawa Senators. As we go into tonight's action, they are in a playoff spot. Brady Tkachuk's never been in a playoff game. They've got new ownership. I mean, making the playoffs would be so big for that team in that market.
Yeah.
Do you expect them to be aggressive when it comes to adding to give themselves the best chance to be part of the final 16 in the playoff dance?
Yeah, they'd like to. Steve Staios, their GM, he wants to add. They don't have a ton of cap space, so they're going to have to be a little bit creative if they make a major impact type addition. But they're buying. They're looking. They'd love to add a defenseman. That has been, something they've been searching for a good chunk of the season. If they can add a top 4 caliber D, that's atop their list. And then if they can add some secondary scoring, that's also kind of part of it. And that's almost what every team wants, but a top 4D and a mid-6 forward. But Ottawa's definitely, they're definitely looking. They'd like to add. I suspect they're going to add at least one piece ahead of the deadline. But again, their cap situation, they don't have a ton of flexibility in terms of adding a big piece. So they might have to get creative and get another team kind of in the mix to kind of help facilitate a trade. And that means you got to cough up another asset to have a team kind of, retain on a player's deal. But Ottawa's looking, and if they can pull it off, they'd like to, because it's their mindset geared right towards the playoffs.
Dave Pagnotta of the Fourth Period is with us, checking out the latest edition of the trade watch list. It's 4.0 this time, available at the Fourth Period. Obviously Winnipeg Jet fans have their sights set on big things. They're the number one team in the West, number one team in the Central Division. But we know how tough the West is, and particularly the Central. We talked about what the Jets are looking at right now. What are you hearing about the Dallas Stars and the Avalanche, who have already made one big move and are sort of struggling right now and just sitting around that wild card spot, which is not an area they're used to being in the standings?
No, it's not. And they're looking as well. I think they get an indication in the next few days here as to Gabe Landeskog's status, and that'll factor into how much money they have or don't have to play with. No secret they want to upgrade their 2C. Casey Middlestat just hasn't gelled with the system and the structure there. With Bedard, Bednar, excuse me. So they'd like to upgrade that position, but that's something they'll look at again in the summer if they can't do it now. But they're out there and they're looking. With respect to Dallas, word that I've gotten is Miro Heiskanen's done for the season, and he will be eligible, or the expected return is maybe the first round. More likely right now the second round. If he improves, maybe he can get in at some point in the first round. That frees up $8.45 million of his cap space if they throw him on LTIR, which they haven't yet. And Dallas has 4.6 or in and around 4.6 in current cap space right now. They're going to look to make a big ad. Dallas is looking around. They're one of the teams that would love to get their hands on Brock Nelson. We'll see what happens there. And you look at their cap moving forward, they've got a little bit of flexibility. Like, some guys are going to need big deals, Wyatt Johnson, Stankoven eventually, and so on. But Jamie Benn, his big buddy, is off the books next season. He'll stay, probably sign a small term deal. Dadonov's money is off the books. Duchesne will probably stick around that $3 to $5 million range, but they're going to have a lot of flexibility. So they're not exclusively looking necessarily, another team, not exclusively looking at the rental market. But Jim Nill wants to swing big and wants to give the Stars the best opportunity at a championship. Like I said, if they keep going in the playoffs, they'll have Heiskanen back either the later part of the first round or the second round. The projection, my understanding is, of Tyler Seguin's return would be conference final. That's kind of the timeline if they get to that point. So if they want to have Seguin in the mix, they got to move on to round 3. So they want to add pieces and take advantage of their cap situation, given the unfortunate injuries, to beef up that roster even more, even after adding Granlund and Ceci. They moved a first-round pick in that deal. They don't have a second-round pick this year either. I don't know if they want to move their first-round pick next season, but Maverick Bourque is a player that it sounds like if it's a big prize piece, that they're willing to include him in a package to make that happen.
Dave, we raised a banner for the Nashville Predators in July. Off-season champions.
Yes.
Needless to say, they have been anything but during the regular season. What do you make of Barry Trotz's situation after this just incredibly disappointing year for the Preds? And in particular, a guy that we've talked about, a lot of people in Winnipeg would love to see, is Ryan O'Reilly. The chances that he would be on the move, but just anything else that Nashville might be in an obvious selling situation after this terrible year.
Yeah, but they're proceeding with caution because they like the ads. They like Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea. They just kind of forgot that they've got other holes on this roster that they need to fill. So that's going to be the task for Barry this summer. Nyquist is probably getting moved. He's on an expiring deal. Hasn't had the best season. Not compared to last season, he was great. They if he was playing at this level, at that level this season, they'd get a good return for him. But they'll listen on O'Reilly, but you're going to have to overpay. Like they don't want to give up the farm. I think Barry. He kind of, when he said earlier on in the season, if things don't keep going, we're going to have to look towards a rebuild. That was more of a loose threat to try to light a fire under the team's butts, and then it just didn't work because there's not enough there. They're not going to go through a rebuild. They're not going to get rid of Stamkos and Marchessault just because, hey, the first 8 months haven't worked out. But they're going to look to add in the summer to complement the rest of the roster. So if they move out Ryan O'Reilly, they're going to have to fill the center position, which they're already and have been trying to upgrade. They want a 2C badly. They move out him, they're going to need a 1C. So you're going to have to pay a premium to get Ryan O'Reilly. I don't know if that's in the cards for the Jets. Maybe a few other teams would be willing to go down that road if they feel they're right there, but you're going to have to pay a premium for that asset. And I don't know how many teams are willing to do that.
It is. It's always an interesting time as we get into. There sort of was two trade deadlines this year. There was the one, at the end of January, sort of going into the break, where we saw a bunch of those moves already made. Yeah. And then we come down to this period where a lot of times we're hearing a lot of talk, but it is sort of a staring contest between these GMs. Do you think we'll see many deals in advance of the deadline, or is this going to be a slow trickle and then a huge bunch of activity on the 7th?
It's looking like it's trending in that direction. I thought there was going to be activity last week, not the first week of Four Nations, but the last week in between, the Monday games and the final. It didn't happen. There's been a lot of talk, and there continues to be among teams, but we just haven't seen the action yet. I think, like I said, it's trending towards slow, big boom, day before, day of deadline. But if somebody pulls the trigger early on a deal, like let's say it's Brock Nelson. I would be surprised right now, but let's say Brock Nelson gets traded today, then all the other teams in that race are going, uh-oh, there's a big asset that we were pursuing. He's out. We need to pivot quickly before we lose out on option B. And that might result in the domino effect and multiple deals happening day after day after day, like we saw 2 years ago, where there was like so many moves happening and then there was a little bit of activity deadline day. I think it's going to be, there's a potential for that, but I think we'll probably see, 1 or 2 or 3 impact moves over these next 10 days and then a big deadline day. That's what it's looking like. For broadcast purposes, I hope that's the case, but it is what it is. I just want to see activity. We all do. It's kind of hard to gauge right now, but I think a lot of it, once the dam opens, the first one goes, then you usually see that flow. We just got to wait for that first one at this point.
Hey, Dave, before we go, I've got to ask you about the Canucks. They trade JT Miller. Elias has been a shell of himself as of late.
Yeah.
is there buyer or maybe seller's remorse for moving JT Miller when they did, considering we're seeing Elias on this trade board? I mean, how does this shake out? And is there a likelihood that Paterson could possibly be dealt as early as the deadline?
It's possible. This is another overpaced scenario, especially with JT out. I don't think there's any remorse in that on that side of things. I think it came to a head. He never asked for a trade. I believe he waived his no trade, or either waived his no trade. No, excuse me. His no trade was about to kick in before Tampa traded him to Vancouver. He wasn't thrilled then, but then he really fell in love with Vancouver. He didn't want to go, but given the circumstances, they had to, and he accepted that, and he was ready. With Elias Paterson, he loves Vancouver too. He wants to stay. I think there's some off ice things that he's dealing with that's affecting his play. But I think from Vancouver's side of things, they still believe he's that 90, 100-point caliber player. He's only 26. Get him in the right headspace, and maybe it's after trade deadline. Maybe he realizes he comes to. Maybe a load kind of gets weighted off his shoulders that trade deadline's passed, so he doesn't have to deal with that speculation. He can just focus on his game, and maybe he goes off then. But Vancouver will listen. But again, this is an overpay scenario, and as long as they're in this wild card race, it's tough. Like, ownership wants them in the playoffs, so the mindset is make the playoffs. They may hold on to Brock Besser as their own rental, even though they're not anywhere aligned with respect to term and dollars based on term. And he's a UFA this summer, so they've got to deal with that. They want to add a scorer to their lineup. I think Vancouver is going to look to add, as I said. They've wanted an additional offensive winger to add to this group, so we'll see what happens there. Center, I think they're going to reside to what they've got now and then look at options in the summer. But that's kind of where they're at. They're management and ownership says go make the playoffs, so they got to figure out how to do that.
Dave, great stuff. I know you're busy these days. Thanks for jumping on with us. Again, thefourthperiod.com, Dave's latest trade watch board is up. We'll stay in touch, and hopefully we'll have some exciting things to talk about. Kevin Cheveldayoff pulling the trigger on some things to help the number one team in the West have an even better chance at hoisting the cup. Pegs, have a great one. Say hi to Dennis, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got it, buddy. See you, man.
All right, fun stuff with Dave. I know we'll talk to him at some point next week as we get ready for the 7th of March and the trade deadline. Don't forget, extended WST on trade deadline day, as we do every year. We'll get going at 11 a.m. and crank it right through the final buzzer, along with all the deals that sneak in after 2 p.m. So extended show heading in. And that actually technically, I guess, is our 4th anniversary, because the 8th is a Saturday, and next Wednesday, big show, 1,000 for WST. Maybe we should get those special T-shirts made up like they did for Paul Stastny and Wheeler's 1,000th game. We'll worry about that in a minute. Anyways, Jeff Hamilton coming up. But before that, I want to get to some fan feedback brought to you by our friends at fansfirst.ca. Fans First is the ticket resale site with no added fees, meaning what you see is what you pay. Best place to buy and sell Winnipeg tickets on the resale market. And if you're a season ticket holder that has an extra pair of tickets that you need to get rid of or looking to get something for, the best place to do it. Incredible customer service, quick payment the next business day after the game is played. Take it from me, I've used it quite often throughout the year for both services, and I've never had an issue. In fact, it's been a great addition to the season so far in the last couple of years as it's grown here in Winnipeg. Fansfirst.ca, check the site out today. Now, the fan feedback, of course, we were talking about the trade deadline coming up, and Remo threw up the poll. Who should the Jets prioritize at the trade deadline? The options: a top 6 forward, a depth forward, help on defense, or stay the course. A depth forward, 3%, and I'm sort of with people on this. The Jets have great depth forwards, and I think they've got guys that can play outside of the lineup. right now, that would not be where I would be focusing. A top 6 forward, 23%. Certainly, I mean, if some of the guys we're talking about, Brock Nelson, Ryan O'Reilly came available, I think that would be a nice upgrade at center in the middle of that second line. Certainly a little bit, a great 200-foot game on both of those players. O'Reilly's situation, I mean, a guy that has some great playoff experience as well. But 24% for the top 6 forward, 6% say stay the course, or I guess that's now down to 5%. 69%. The blue line, help on defense, where Jet fans are looking for. We've got tons of comments in the chat during that Pagnotta segment. Still a lot of people that are keen on Ryan O'Reilly if he was available, though a couple people wondering whether his speed's still enough to keep up with some of the speedy forwards that the Winnipeg Jets have right now. But you can vote right now, help on defense up to 70%, and you can keep your comments coming in for fan feedback in the Winnipeg Sports Talk chat, and you can hit us up anytime on X at Sports Talk WPG. Fans First fan feedback is brought to you by Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. Check out the site today at fansfirst.ca. All right, Jeff Hamilton's coming up. Big shout out to our friends at Princess Auto for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Princess Auto is synonymous with Winnipeg, founded in Winnipeg and headquartered in Winnipeg. Of course, the home of the Bombers is Princess Auto Stadium, but 3 Princess Autos here in Manitoba to serve you. Panet Road, right by their headquarters, Portage Avenue West, and of course, a location out in Brandon for our friends at Westman. And Princess Autos, where you're going to find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around anywhere. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them today or shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Of course, speaking of great Winnipeg companies, Wallace & Wallace has been the fencing and overhead door experts since 1946. Now, if your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if it's time to replace your garage door, talk to Wallace & Wallace. They've got the largest selection of overhead garage doors in town, which means one perfectly matched to fit your home and add value to it at the same time. Give them a call, 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will pop by and give you a free estimate. Check them out online as well at wallacefences.com or pop down and see them at their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. And hey, we can start thinking about spring, as I mentioned. You know what that means, playoffs, but it also means grads, and it also means wedding season just around the corner. Fellas, if you need to up your menswear game for any or all of those, get on down to F Apparel at 190 Smith Street downtown. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, an incredible selection of menswear accessories. They've got their grad promo on right now, a free shirt and tie with the purchase of any suit for 2025 Manitoba grads. And of course, if you're in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the guys at F Apparel about a great discount for the wedding party when the fellas get their suits at F for the big day. Again, 190 Smith Street downtown. Check them out online. F, that's EPHapparel.com for more info on their promos or to book an appointment. All right, hammer time. You know what that means. By the way, pushing 500 in the chat. Hit that thumbs up button and welcome newbies. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done it already. Jeff Hamilton from the Free Press joins us now. Hammer, what's going on?
Hustler, just another awesome day in my kick-ass life, man. So just, what do you call it, Tuesday? It's been going great, man. How are you doing?
Tuesday. I'm great. Speaking of nice runs, last week was all time, being in Boston for those games, still kind of pinching myself. And then right back to it, and time to see the Jets pull their last 2 games kind of out of the fire late. And I'll say one thing about this team. They've done a lot of winning, and they've won in a lot of different ways. But some pretty exciting moments in these last 2. But the bottom line is Mark Scheifele sets the franchise record with the OT winner last night. And the Jets now doing what no Jet team has ever done before. And that's win 10 consecutive games in a real nice spot with 25 to go in the season.
I like that Joe Pascucci set the record straight. I think it was yesterday before the game, just talking about it being that the Winnipeg Jets 1.0 or 2.0 hadn't won 10 straight games in a row. So that's a really special mark. I was in the seats last night, Huss, for that game. I saw it go down to the wire. I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, it's amazing how they can just kind of figure it out when they need to figure it out, as we've seen the last two games. But when you looked at the whole 60 minutes of that game, I mean, the Jets were buzzing nonstop. Guys just couldn't score goals. Guys couldn't find the back of the net. It was almost to a point where I wouldn't say they were overpassing, but they just weren't finishing those overpass plays, you know? Like it was just they were getting, I don't know if you want to say goal, whatever it is, right? Like they weren't giving up a ton of shots. So to see that, I feel like the game turned out the way it was supposed to. It just took dramatic fashion to get there.
Did you live bet them in the third period?
No, I didn't touch them, but I was, if you're asking me about my interest in wagering and what I was thinking about last night, I actually thought the Jets were going to be in tough. They for some reason, every time they play the Sharks, and the Sharks are obviously a very young team, not a very skilled team, but I'll go back to what every player says. It's still the NHL. And these guys, you know, they didn't arrive in Winnipeg, you know, with nerves. I think that they used the game before that to kind of get ready, get going. And then I think they knocked off some of that rust against the Jets and just couldn't finish the deal. Anyways, to answer your question, Huss, it was shot city for me yesterday. I thought a lot of players were going to get some shots on. I didn't think they were going to get goalie, but when I saw them go down 1-0, I was like, okay, this is the way you want it, right? Guys are getting frustrated. Guys are you saw guys just like launching shots from the blue line. You know, Nino Niederreiter's always good for a couple of those ones. You had Neil Pionk trying to get into the action. So I when I got home last night, Huss, and I checked the balance of my situation, I realized that I had maybe not had all the best, but I ended up with a $4.50 profit after last night.
Hey,
so,
nicely done. As long as you're in the green, right? As long as you're in the green. Well,
I was expecting a little bit more from Gabriel Velarde, and I was expecting a lot more from, you know, maybe we shouldn't be expecting a lot more from Vlad Nemestikov, just given his run here, and then rewards the fans and his team after the 2-year extension with another point in that first game back. But, you know, maybe they've, you know, it had to end, right? Those streaks had to end.
That line, I mean, listen, at some point you got to tip your cap to Vanacek. I mean, he was great. He made tons of saves. I mean, the Perfetti and Ehlers had a ton of nice chances. And listen,
Kyle Connor too had a ton of looks as well.
Dude, KFC, I thought he was off of, like, fighting it a little bit through a good portion of that game. And I don't know whether this is a carryover from getting 10 shots on Joel Hofer on Saturday night and not scoring until the shootout.
He didn't play in the final.
Yeah, listen, he was, you know, we'll get to that, you know, kind of the aftermath of, you know, as we move forward. But listen, to me, it was about two guys last night. I would normally include Connor Hellebuck in this conversation, but this was about as a pedestrian, a challenge for Helly. Really nice power play goal early on in the game. Not much else. It was all about whether the Jets were going to be able to get a goal and then see what happened after that. And I mean, Josh Morrissey, coming out of probably the most disappointing moment of his hockey career, not being able to play in that game on Thursday, comes back in the lineup, logs almost 8 minutes of the last 11 and a half in the game. And not only scores the goal, but, you know, just showed, I mean, I know there was an Amazon game. Maybe there were some people that don't normally see the Jets. Like the edge work, the skating, he was just brilliant last night. And obviously earned the Jets that point. And when the Jets get a point, they usually get two. And lo and behold, speaking of pregame wagers, Remis reminded me that Mark Scheifele needed one to get the record. You had to feel it was going to come at home, and he got her done. Better late than never last night. But, you know, I think about those three cornerstones of the franchise, Hellebuck, Scheifele, and Morrissey. All of them are playing maybe the best hockey of their careers, and it's a big reason why this team, for the first time ever, is 10-0-0 in their last 10, with a very significant lead right now as we get down to the final quarter of the regular season.
Yeah, I'll start with Josh Morrissey. It's funny you bring him up with the edge work, right? Because there was one point in that game in particular where I think he took a pass by his own blue line, and by the time he was done doing back over crossovers, he was in the Sharks' end on like the half board,
skating sideways.
Yeah,
it was so
exactly.
Cool.
And you should see people around me being like, the fans were like, "I love his skate work. And look at that skate."
There
work.
was a buzz in the arena when it happened. I mean, I agree with you. I was in the seats.
It was almost like it was, and I was at an angle where I was at the in the 200s, first, second, third row or second row, and right at that blue line. So I watched it, and it almost looked like slow motion. It was just, it was poetic in a lot of ways. But I mean, that's Josh Morrissey. Josh Morrissey showed in the Four Nations Cup that he already had shown it in recent years that he was one of the top defensemen. He is one of the top defensemen in the NHL, right? And that's not me proclaiming this. That's, I think, is quite obvious now, and particularly cemented after that tournament, regardless of not playing in the final. He was majorly missed. You could tell throughout the game, there were moments in the game that in that final, I was thinking, imagine this team had Josh Morrissey, how clamped down they would be, or further clamped down they would be. Moving over to Mark Scheifele, I mean, man, like the work he does with Adam Oates, the thing about Mark Scheifele and what really, I don't want to say it gets lost in his game, because he does, there's the points and there's the goals this year. I always thought it was funny earlier when he was asked about his goals, and he talked about how Kyle Connor needed to get more and he needed to kind of revert back to passing the puck. And not just his finish, not just his playmaking, but just the cerebral plays that he makes in moments in the game that don't necessarily turn into anything. But you think to yourself, like, and it's half a second delay on stick drags. It's moving and then whipping the puck across space, buying that time, knowing where his teammates are. And I think this is what you're starting, what we've seen before. I shouldn't say starting to see, but it's that chemistry that this team has, the years of service they played together. They understand the building that they play in at home. They understand the bounces, the different areas. And, you look at Mark Scheifele, and whether it's the snub from Four Nations that's getting him going, or it's just everything's, coming to a, kind of coming to a peak here for him. It's certainly special to watch, and to watch him take over that game at parts yesterday. I mean, there were moments in that game, Huss, where you thought to yourself, he's going to set somebody up on the doorstep. Like, it's just going to be a tap-in goal eventually with the way he was playing. But to finish it off the way he did, the net presence, I mean, Mark Scheifele is deserving, certainly, to be on Team Canada. And I think he's, you talk to scouts and other people around the league, they are raving about Mark Scheifele and his impact on this team, and making and arguing that he's one of the best players in the entire National Hockey League. So, I mean, that's not necessarily a meteoric rise for Mark Scheifele, but it certainly is a rise nonetheless. And also, looking at Connor Hellebuck, I mean, I don't know about you, Huss, but that moment in that game, in that final, where he was eyeing the ref and it stayed there, and he looked like he was locked in, unlike anything I've ever seen before. I didn't think Canada was winning that game. And certainly, as someone who's from Winnipeg and has a lot of friends and family who are rooting for the Jets and are praying that they can do something special this year, that's the guy that you got to be leaning on. I mean, this guy is dialed in. He's ready. I think, I think the proof will be in the pudding, obviously, with the playoffs and where the Jets go. And I feel like that's kind of that thing that's lingering right here. I think amongst all Jets fans is what they're going to do in the playoffs, because of what we've seen so far and what we'll probably see in these last 20 or so games. Something special is brewing. I just don't see a team beating Connor Hellebuck 4 times. And I don't know if I had that same feeling even last year. In a year where he won the Vezina, right? Like, it's this year, he just, when you ask guys to take their game, up a percentage or two, I guess that's daily. So I guess you want to really up your game year to year. I don't know how much you can ask Connor Hellebuck to do that. I mean, this guy is a sure-footed and is confidence inducing for a team as it gets. And I know you've been the conductor of the heart train for Connor Hellebuck, but I just, I'm starting to sit there with you. I just don't know how you can look at this team, look at this defense. And I'm not being critical of the Jets defense. The Jets defense is playing great hockey, but the injuries they've had, the in and out, the different, they are playing strong in front of him, but Hellebuck is just getting the job done. And even on nights like yesterday, where, he wasn't overly busy, he was certainly effective and kept that team in the game down the stretch. One of those one of those power plays or one of those, shots, saves that he had. I think he had 17 saves yesterday or around that, 16 saves, I think, with the one goal. But, I think there's a couple there that looked grade A. Macklin Celebrini, I know we're getting off on things. That kid is unbelievable, man. And
speaking of in the mix for the Olympic team next year.
Totally. 100% has to be, in my opinion. Like, this guy is confident. He had a couple good looks. Other players had a couple good looks. I thought, that's what you need from your goaltender, because those games aren't, it's almost bet. You'll ask some goalies, including Connor Hellebuyck, and sometimes having those 25 to 35 shots gets you in a rhythm. When you're limited to, like, I think he only faced like 2 or 3 shots in the third period. When you're getting those, you need to be sharp when they come, because you're obviously waiting for them. So, all in all, Huss, I mean, those pillars, and to think, myself included, talking about trading those guys a couple of years ago, and how come they're not gone yet, and how are teams not, I will say this: New Jersey's certainly kicking themselves. Boston's certainly kicking themselves. This is a new era for Winnipeg, and you just got to, with the contracts where they are, and with some guys coming up here, you got to wonder where they're going to be in the next, few years here.
Well, it's funny. I mean, we'll always think of the double bomb drop by Chevy on Thanksgiving last year, with the dual 7-year extensions for Scheifele and Connor, and I think Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck. I think that, as we move forward, that is going to be one of the franchise defining days, to be honest. And you can't really talk about it without talking about the previous season, to your point about New Jersey and Boston and some of the teams that, I mean, we all remember. And Pierre LeBrun, one of the more connected guys in the game, wrote that, talking about a Hellebuyck extension, I believe the quote was, "That ship has sailed." And then it came back into shore somehow. But Scheifele is such an interesting study, Jeff. And I mean, you've been around with the Free Press. You've been covering him, as have we, really since he was the first draft pick of the organization. And like, there are kind of Scheifele eras now. You think of Scheifele coming in as the young hockey keener that was, happy to be there and, just had all of this young, youthful energy. And then I don't know what happened. It kind of coincided with the real success of the team. And let's not forget, Mark had an all-time playoff run in 2017-18. I off the top of my head, I think he had 14 goals in 17 games. Scored huge goals in Nashville to beat the Predators in that massive second-round series. And then, he, like the team, kind of went sour for a little bit. And, when you look back through the end of the 2019 season, through sort of that pandemic era, it just seemed like a different player. And he seemed unhappy. The room itself, I mean, that's been well documented. But specifically with Scheifele, he seemed like a different person. And you look and you listen to him speak after setting that franchise record, talking about how proud he is to be a Jet and loving the organization. It's like it's taken another 180. And this third act, if you will, of Mark Scheifele here in the city of Winnipeg with the Winnipeg Jets has been the best one. And it's just that I don't know whether there was one particular moment. Obviously, the contract, I think, taking a lot of the noise and having that security once he was finished his other deal maybe was the biggest part of it. I'm really not sure, but all I can say right now is he is right now playing and leading the way I think we all knew he was capable of, but frankly didn't seem like that was still part of him 2 years ago or so. And I mean, that development might be, in addition to Hellebuck's, of course, brilliance, might be the biggest reason why we're seeing the Jets where they are right now, setting new records and being on top of the West.
Look, you talk about Connor Hellebuyck and being traded. Mark Scheifele was going to get traded. I think, and I think it was a market correction for him a little bit, right? I mean, this guy, I think, realized over that time as he was picturing his future possibly somewhere else, as he was getting ready for a new era, kind of came back to it and probably had I'd love to hear this from him, right? I mean, Mark's a good guy, but Mark isn't necessarily an open guy, right? He's not somebody who is going to dive into the emotion of things and let you in, if you will. And so, like, I imagine that time for him was a pretty interesting time. I mean, it was a time for him where he was looking at money, right? I mean, you look at the different eras, Huss, of his his career. I mean, you can follow that through
his
almost his
contracts.
contracts, right?
For
like
sure.
exactly. And this contracts, you mentioned that run in 18. Jets did some savvy business. They saw a guy who was dedicated. They saw a guy who was rising. You had Mike Babcock. I know that's a sin now to mention that name, but at the time he was running Team Canada. He was, amongst if not the best coach in the National Hockey League. He spoke about Mark Scheifele and how he thought he was a rising star and was going to be one of the best centers in the league. And then, finishes that up in Winnipeg, gets that deal done in Winnipeg, commits to 8 years. And then, so for a good price, right? I mean, he knows how much he left on the table. That's just the reality of pro sports. He could have torn his knee that year and not earned a dime, right? I mean, those are the gambles and bets you make on, in a career. And now, so I think that was important to him. But I think when he really thought about it, he had it pretty good in Winnipeg. You know what I mean? Like he had influence, he had say, he had, I think a big part of that deal, Huss, for his leverage included, well, if I'm coming back here, I also want to have influence. I also want to have say. There's a reason why Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor are attached at the hip. And I'll be interested to see what Kyle Connor's interest in an extension is and how it relates to playing with Mark Scheifele. We know the chemistry between those two, and we know the magic between those two. And so you look at Mark, and I think he realized that he had a home here. He had a home in Winnipeg, that he could be the guy here, that he could be leaned on, that he could have, like I said, influence in the room, influence in decision-making. And I don't think he's getting that somewhere else. I don't think he's going into another leadership group and calling the shots. I'm not trying to make this guy sound like an egomaniac, that he wants all the power in the world. But as a player in this league, you want respect. You want respect in the locker room. You want respect in whatever organization you have. And I think it dawned on him that he had a lot of that in Winnipeg, and that he'd have a lot of that moving forward. And that if he really wanted to make a name for himself in this league, go look at what Dale Hawerchuk did here, right? Go look at what guys did in these hometowns and were beloved. I don't know if Mark...
also, by the way, look at what happened when Hawerchuk left.
That's what I mean.
Because I think
that's where I was just getting with it, was that I think when he left, I think he had a good, obviously, career here, but I think I don't know if regret's the right word, but it's just like he had a home in Winnipeg, right? He was the number one pick. It was kind of like you don't really realize it until you leave kind of feeling, right? And I think that would have been Dale's impact and whatnot. But that's what I mean. So now you have Mark Scheifele probably looked at, I don't want to say he looked at the records, but if you're Winnipeg and you're talking about, hey, you want to be the guy here, like look how close you are. And now here he is leading this franchise in goals scored. So I think it was a bit of convincing, but I also think it dawned on Mark that what they have here is a good ride, and be careful what you wish for, because if don't mess with a good thing. And maybe the wins weren't there and the records weren't there, there was enough there to see that this team had the pieces. They have players, like Connor Hellebuyck. I don't think that was a coincidence whatsoever that both of them committed for identical contracts, because they knew that when, their time hadn't come, but was coming. And I think we're seeing that here. How many years it will last for, that will be up to, guys like Mark Scheifele, guys like Connor Hellebuyck, and certainly guys like Kevin Cheveldayoff to continue to bring in and complement these guys, right? Because you're going to have to bring in and usher in a new group. You can't ride, and they haven't rid the same group. There has been changes, but I do think that that, to your point, Huss, is those signings are the catalyst to what I believe, to what many believe is a new era, now. Well,
I mean, it certainly feels like that. And he is right at the front of it, along with Hellebuyck and Morrissey. And to have, those franchise cornerstone players all signed here for the foreseeable future. Josh has 3 years left on his deal. Obviously, Helly and Scheif are just into the early part of their 7-year extensions. And I think that's going to go a long ways to help more of the players that they have here. Like the Athletic can do all the things that they want of asking players elsewhere. It seems like the guys that are here are pretty happy here and want to stay here. And let's face it, being on a first place team, that's fun. Winning is fun. These guys like to do it. I think that's going to help keep guys like Kyle Connor around. You hope that it might have some good influence in Nikolai Ehlers. That I guess remains to be seen. But it also can help, much like it did with Paul Stastny in 17-18, get some guys that maybe weren't thinking Winnipeg to really consider it if they have that sort of trade protection. Let's move it into next week right now. And I know even though you might not be doing Jets Daily, you're always shaking the trees. What are you making? What are you hearing about what the Jets may be up to? And targets at least, because it certainly sounds like Cheveldayoff, we just talked to Pagnotta, has been very active in talking, seeing what the landscape is. And, with where the team is right now and the opportunity at hand, it wouldn't at all surprise me to see Cheveldayoff be maybe even more aggressive than he's been in previous years. And he certainly hasn't sat in his hands when the team's been good.
Yeah, I think this is the potential for a big splash if it works. Like the Jets need to continue. And I'm not talking about bringing in 4 or 5 guys, big splash. I'm talking about filling that center hole, that 2C hole. No offense to Vlad Nemestikov, who's done, excellent work in relief of trying to figure out that. And, I made the joke to my buddies yesterday that they locked up their 2C for another 2 years after this year. I do think that's an area that they're going to look at. I would look at teams like the Boston Bruins. I would look at teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I'm not going to create fodder here, but I think some big names on both those teams, that might be on the wish list, the Christmas wish list, but I think it extends out throughout the league. I think you look at Ryan O'Reilly, we already know that's, the Jets want him for his experience, his leadership, his position, all those things. I've heard David on that before me talk about it's going to take, arguably a king's ransom. And I believe that to be true. I don't know why I believe that to be true other than O'Reilly wanting to be in Nashville. Cause like, he's not a spring chicken and it's not like, I don't think his best years are ahead of him. So I wouldn't be doing that if I was the Winnipeg Jets, but I always think, I think there's, a lot of potential. I know I'm not throwing any names out here, Huss, and I know that's whatever, but I thought Seth Jones being available. Now, I don't like the contract, obviously, but I think this team wants to get bigger. They want to get more physical. They know that when they're at their best, they're plugging up the middles of the ice, and they need to be that physical player. I think on defense, they want to be more physical, and I think they're even looking to complicate. For a while there, they didn't know there was debates on where Adam Lowry would play center. Would he be a 2C? I don't think they're interested at all in him being a 2C. They want him to be the heart and soul of that shutdown line. I'm not saying they're looking to replace Mason Appleton or anything. I think they got some guys in house that could fill in on for injuries or whatever. But I do think they're looking for a strong physical forward outside of that second C. Some veteran presence. I think that's what it's going to come down to for this team is some flashy pieces in the top 4. I know Cody Ceci, that was a guy that was on the Jets' radar. There's been some guys who have been pulled off in recent trades that the Jets have been asking about. But I do think there could be some very interesting moves here in the coming weeks. But the other part too, Huss, is I think you need to be careful because this team is pretty good. They're doing, even watching that, I know it's against the San Jose Sharks on the end of a back-to-back, but even just watching these games, you're seeing a lot of players, guys like Rasmus Kupari flash. You're seeing guys doing things that, you have the depth there. But I do think the Jets are still a few more pieces away and addressing that second line C and that, and again, that more physical presence up front is also a priority.
Well, and I mean, listen, the goal is to not win a round, is to win 4 rounds. And, we know the philosophies of really every NHL team. I mean, you need a lot more than 6 defensemen. You need 8, you need 9, you might need 10 to make it through. And you certainly need some of those depth players. Now, I have no worries at all about the depth forwards on the Jets. To your point, I mean, guys like,
don't you see them picking up a Craig Smith or something? You know what I mean? I'm not saying they should be, but that's kind of their MO. I have a hard time arguing about who that guy should take the place of in the lineup with the way that the guys are playing right now. And, I'm sort of subscribed to the original thing that you said that, you can do a few things along the periphery. I don't see a lot of guys. Now, listen, on the blue line, I think there's an argument to be made that you could get a guy that's a 5'6" defenseman that could come in and upgrade that third pairing for sure. But forward-wise, the speed that the Jets' bottom 6 plays with, I mean, you're talking about guys like Iafallo. If you get that center, you got Nemestikov in that group as well.
The third line is set. Morgan Barron's going to be coming back. Kupari's hard to take out of the lineup. Like, you know, I wouldn't put a lot towards that, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think these guys have earned the opportunity to go out there and compete, considering what they've done so far this year. But I do think that, you know, with what they've done so far this season, they will be looking very significantly at a significant upgrade of a guy that could come in and play that 2C position, not necessarily just for this year. Like a Brock Nelson would be nice on an expiring contract. If you can get that done, great. A guy like O'Reilly has an extra year on his deal. I think that would really be attractive to the team. But the bottom line right now is that, you know, every single game they prove more and more to their management and their team that this is a year that it is worth focusing in on. And, you know, we heard Pagnotta mention that Colby Barlow could definitely be available. You know, I don't think
there's a lot of untouchables, and Colby Barlow is for sure in play.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And they're high on Colby Barlow.
You know, like to sit in, you know, inside that room and be a fly on the wall and see, you know, how much or what prospects picks are off limits. I'm sort of with you. I think the situation would indicate or dictate that that's not necessary. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people in that category right now. And that should make for a pretty interesting and intriguing next 9 days before we get to the buzzer.
Well, that's the thing. These are the decisions, because the thing is, it's not like the Winnipeg Jets are sitting around and going, this guy's expendable, this guy's expendable, this guy's expendable, this guy's expendable. It's the teams that are asking for them, right? The teams want their players too. It's not just one way ask. Yeah. It's like, oh, these are our available players.
Who can we give you to help you win a cup?
Yeah, exactly. It's you know, this is who we want back, and the Jets have, unlike a lot of, you know, I would say a lot of teams, that there's still a fair amount of teams out there that have, you know, their cupboards aren't nearly as impressive as Winnipeg's, and therefore would use, you know, take picks, take selections. Here's the other thing, Huss. This draft year coming up, hearing lots about this draft not being impressive. This next draft, about how it's the first year. I've heard this from a few different scouts, that this year is kind of the year where the COVID effect, if you will, comes into play of development. And that a lot of scouts are saying run from this draft, at least the ones I've been talking to. So I don't know if I would be all that worried giving up, you know, a first round pick, especially if you're, you know, Winnipeg and you're hoping to finish where you're at right now. So I certainly think that's in play, but I don't think you can look at anybody in the cupboards and go, this guy's untouchable, outside of maybe Brandon Yeager, which is Brandon Yeager is like he's a guy that's like, you can't trade him because you just traded for him. And it's just like, it would make you look, you know, I think optically
you could, but I just don't think that they'd like. I think that in particular,
they don't want to do that because it doesn't look good.
The other guy I think that they'd be loath to give up is Salomon, because as things go forward, right shot defenseman with some good size that, you know, he's a guy that I think projects into that, you know, in the bottom two pairs as early as next season, and rookie
the Jets
contract
don't have
as well.
The history of that either, Huss. I mean, and if they're getting rid of, or if they're trading either of those guys, they're not picking up some rental, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to part with those two players, you're going after somebody who is going to be in your lineup, who is going to be you believe is going to be effective in your lineup and for longer than one season. But I also think this too, Huss, is that if you trade one or two prospects, like Brad Lambert's a guy who is available for sure. You know, for a long time, I think he was a guy that wasn't. And it's not that like they're low on these guys. I just think you have to look at this window as your window. It's very difficult to win the Stanley Cup. And while there are players on this roster who, to your words and others, have proven the right to, you know, to keep playing and the right to you know, not make any movement or whatever, the reality is you still need to grow. You still need to build. You don't want to do a drastic makeover, but you do want to bring in proven players. There's still a lack of experience with this club's, you know, Stanley Cup experience that is incredibly valuable. I mean, it is important, and there is value to feeling that heartbreak in the first round every year and promising not to do it. But it's a whole other thing to fight for multiple rounds and to know and understand how that feels. Obviously, a bunch of players got a taste of that in 2018, but that was 7 years ago, and that's a long time ago. Like, those are faint memories in that dressing room, and there's not a lot that those players who are in that series can take from it and apply to it today. They've all changed as humans, as men, as players. And now this is, so you have to look at this opportunity here with Connor Hellebuyck playing the way that he's playing, Scheifele, Morrissey, Ehlers, the line, the list goes on, and you need to bring in some people who have that experience, who have skill, that are better than your bottom line forwards. I'd rather have an abundance of guys that you're wondering what you're putting on your fourth line than trying to justify how good your fourth line is that you've had all year, when I still think those guys get relatively sheltered. So I do think there are some pieces here. And this is what I kind of alluded to before, Huss. I think this will be the biggest sales pitch and, determine the success, if you will, of this trade deadline for Winnipeg, is if Winnipeg can keep this up. Because it's not just like this 10 games turns into 11 games. Like, that draws attention across the league. And it shows that, all these guys are getting the job done. And, whether it might be a Paul Stastny effect, where you maybe have an extra year on there and you see that number 2 hole wide open for you to take, why wouldn't you take that? Why wouldn't that be something you would be interested in? So I think the Jets, as much as anything, the players themselves are the biggest sales pitch to any prospective trade coming up here, if they can keep these good times rolling. Yeah, no doubt. A lot of interesting comments in the chat. I know Ty Marion says, come on, Huss, Kapari's easy to take out of the lineup with a good 2C. I mean, I kind of disagree. Like, I think that the speed he brings to the game, listen, if he had hands, he would be, but he does a lot of things that are really working for the Jets. And I think that translates well, especially the speed, the PK to the playoffs. Now, Morgan Barron, I think David Gustafsson can play. I thought Gustafsson played really well in the play. He was one of the few guys that actually did step up his game in the playoffs when everything else was going on around. So there's a whole bunch of guys that I think have earned the opportunity to be in. Now, that's not to say you don't want to make yourselves better. And guess what? On really good teams, there's really tough decisions, and there's going to be some guys that can play that won't be there. I just mean that the focus on, when I was talking about Kupari, like adding fourth line guys, I don't know whether the replacing team really like-minded like players. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right? Like I think they've got an amazing mix. I think the record speaks for itself with what those players have been doing, and that's why the periphery of the lineup isn't, at least at forward, isn't as much a real concern. Listen, you got to lean on your fourth line though in the playoffs. So absolutely, you got to ask yourself the question: if David Gustafsson has done enough, if Rasmus Kupari has done enough, has Morgan Barron, who's going to come back from a lengthy injury, is he going to be the guy that you want to rely on? The fourth line, they're like the unsung heroes of every long playoff run. They're the ones that are chipping in goals. You need to have offense. You can't just finish the game with a clean sheet. So it needs to be better. And that's, I think the concern is with some fans who do look at, because I look at Rasmus Kupari and I wonder why he can't be on the third line in some cases, right? However, I also don't disagree with that comment about, taking him out of the lineup. I just think you need to be careful what you have, because the stakes get higher and higher as the playoffs near, and especially when you get in the playoffs. And, the bright lights, everyone wants to go on playoff runs, man. Everyone wants to go on deep playoff runs and whatever. Not everybody is built for them. And that's when you really figure out what you have in the locker room, is during those times. And we just haven't been able to see it enough, obviously, here in Winnipeg. But I do understand why, the idea of bringing in fourth line players to replace fourth line players doesn't seem ideal. And I don't think it necessarily is. If you are going to replace them, it better be with someone who has more of a scoring touch and more experience. Otherwise, it just doesn't seem much like an upgrade at all. Yeah, well, I tell you what, just starting off a fourth line with a guy like Iafallo, the team is in a really good spot right now. And, what might this team look like on the 8th of March? Pretty fun to talk about. That's why we've gone so long today. Hey, pal, always great having you on the program. We'll reconnect offline, and we'll look forward to doing this again next week as we count down to next week, next Friday's trade deadline. Thanks for doing this. Always a pleasure, my friend. This weather out here has me feeling like it's playoff hockey
so
already,
back.
but
It's
unfortunately,
springtime.
we need
Let's
to
bring out the whites,
wait a couple.
put the shorts
months,
on.
Yeah,
let's
exactly.
go.
I saw people out in shorts a couple times yesterday, including one at Walmart around 9:45 p.m. So Winnipeg's in full force. So here we go. Let's get her done. It's fun to talk about it, and it's even more fun to watch. So let's see what's in store here, Huss.
You got it. Take it easy, pal. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, brother.
Good stuff. Just seeing some of these other chats. Fast City, we have the depth players. We need a 2C and a defenseman with size, grit, and willing to drop the gloves. I co-sign that. I'm here. I'm here on that. You know, someone said Kupari over Appleton on that line. Listen, Kupari can do a lot of those things. But just he's never put up any of the offensive numbers. Like, let's not forget that Appleton did have the most points of Heat, Lowry, or Niederreiter last year. Now, could he move down the lineup? Absolutely. If you have a better option, could you do that? I just don't know that Rasmus, with the hands or lack thereof, is a guy that would be taking that spot anytime soon. But certainly does fit in, has the world-class speed, has turned into a great checker, doing a lot of things to help team wins games. And you can say that about a lot of the guys in the lineup. All right. Hey, listen, huge shout out to our friends at Boston Pizza. I was talking to some friends at the game last night that were different BPs for last Thursday night for the gold medal game of the Four Nations. And I mean, that was an absolutely all-time night. I mean, sports bars, I think, coast to coast. That's why I think this number, the TV number, is very, very low from reality as to how many people, because I think every Boston Pizza in the city was packed for that game. Of course, we're going to be doing it again come Stanley Cup playoffs, but we've still got this stretch to the end of the season for the Winnipeg Jets, heading over on the road tomorrow and Thursday. Great spot is always BP, pick a player contest, great Boston Pizza prizes, and of course, ice cold schooners, world famous BP wings, and gourmet pizzas. And if you are staying at home, you can always get those hot and fresh to your door by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And as we get excited for the playoffs, you might want to head down to Royal Sports, the #1 sports superstore in Winnipeg for over 50 years. There's nothing like the stock in Royal Sports. It's the biggest store. They got the most stuff. And if you're a Jets fan, whether it's jerseys, hoodies, hats, toques, scarves, Q-zips, golf shirts, you name it, they have got it. So as we get ready to throw the whites on for the playoffs, get down to Royal Sports. Although you might want to wait until after the trade deadline to get that new jersey, just to make sure of who you're thinking about picking up. Of course, all the other NHL teams represented. Major League Baseball with Blue Jays season just around the corner. Tons of new Bomber gear. And Jet fans, make sure to check out the wall display of the exclusive new era collabs they did. So many cool hats that you have never seen anywhere else because they are one-off runs and they're all at Royal Sports. So pop on down there, tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. You can find out more on their Instagram feed at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merch drops and sale information. Royal Sports 750 Pembina Highway. We've got Ken Bentley coming up in just a minute, but first up, let's give a big cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
Learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, well, maybe the only team around Winnipeg and Manitoba hotter than the Winnipeg Jets right now is the University of Manitoba women's volleyball team. 14 straight wins, #2 in the country. Playoff action coming up this Thursday and Friday at Investors Group Athletic Center, and then hosting nationals in a couple weeks. And the longtime head coach of the Herd women's volleyball team joins us now, Ken Bentley. Ken, it's great to have you on Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are things going?
Good. I have to say, though, I still feel way less pressure than the Jets.
Hey, you know what? It's good to feel that. Well, listen, you have incredible experience. You've been, I think this is 39 years with the women's volleyball program, and the opportunity to host nationals. The team's just been crushing in the second half of the season. Things are going pretty darn well for you and your team.
Yeah, no, we're excited. Obviously, we last hosted in back-to-back years, 2000 and 2001. In 2000, we lost a heartbreaker in the final in 5. A match I still haven't watched back, honestly. And then we won the next year. So we made the final both years. Obviously, we had a great experience those 2 years. And yeah, now it's been, it'll be 24 years since we last hosted. So yeah, really excited. Great team, great energy within Bison Sports and our junior Bison program. So yeah, we're just super excited to host.
Well, it's a great time for volleyball as well. I mean, especially with your team, when you're playing this well and, have that squad that you've assembled, people will notice. But, speaking with Steph over at Bison Sports, I mean, youth club volleyball is up over 30%, and attendance for your team up over 50%. So it seems like people are paying attention to what you and your squad's been doing this year.
Yeah, totally. They're a wonderful team to watch, and they have been the last going on 4 years now. I mean, we've just been a really, one of my messages every time before we play is, be the team others want to play for. And they're certainly doing a great job of that. I mean, each and every time they play. So, yeah, they're super exciting, athletic, really skilled players, passionate, just a ton of fun to coach. They've been awesome. And I've coached these kids for a long, long time, going back to club. I mean, some of them I've coached for a decade. So it's certainly reached, many years prior to them even coming onto campus. So, yeah, and our attendance has been amazing, and it's exciting. And our men's program is doing great too, and they're also exciting to watch. So, yeah, we're really happy with our turnouts, and it's fun to play in front of people, So it's been great, and our junior Bison program is a big contributor to that too, obviously. So we've just been on this kind of really relentless, steady build, and it's nice to see it paying off.
Well, for sure. I mean, obviously, first things first, you're focusing on winning and going for a national championship, but when you see that trickle down to the grassroots of the sport here in the province, of which you've been a part of for so long, but also just the support of the team, it is a great thing. This is a team has been building for a number of years. A lot of great athletes, but I have to ask you about Rhea Syrinx, the defending player of the year. You got a real special one there on your squad.
Yeah, sure. We sure do. Yeah. And man, the kid, she's just so good in the gym every day, so humble, so conscientious. She really is just, reminds me of our last player of the year was Rachel Cockrell back in 2014-15. Just the same attitude, just an everydayer. Defends as hard as she hits. Super conscientious kid, boatload of talent, but she maximizes it, which is obviously for any coach. We've seen the other side of that, where maybe really talented kids don't maximize all their potential, and it's nice to have, some that do, and she's certainly one of them.
Now, I've got to ask you about this. This is sort of a unique question, because, I mean, you've coached a lot of players for a long time, but you've got Katrina Bentley, the U of M record holder for assists, Julia Arnold, the U of M record holder for digs, and they're both your daughters. I mean, how special is it to be able to have both of your daughters playing on this team leading up to such a special year, after doing the gig for so long? Like, this must be maybe even more special than a lot of the other championships and incredible teams you've had before.
I'm trying not to think about it that way. I really am not. They've put in big hours in club volleyball right from essentially, when they were 11 years old. I mean, they played other sports and they played their high school sports, but volleyball was the one sport that they wanted to play. And obviously they grew up around it. They grew up around great role models, and they wanted to be one of those players, just like the junior Bisons of today want to be one of the players we have on our team. And it's amazing to see, young kids come up and ask for autographs and want pictures and things like that. It's just, it's a real kind of full circle time, but what I don't want to be lost here is just the amount of time and training they've put in to get to this level and to be, the kind of players they are. And, I didn't bring them kicking and screaming to that. I mean, it's been a partnership, and they have to bring their effort, their commitment, their try every day, and they've done an amazing job of it. But, every dig and every set and every assist that they've made, they've certainly earned.
Well, the numbers speak for themselves, as does the numbers that your team's putting up with 14 straight wins heading into this weekend's playoffs. I wanted to ask you this. I was on the way back. I guess I was down in Kansas City for a football game, and we stopped off for the States, and we were watching the Bills-Ravens game. We were at a Buffalo Wild Wings. It's a Sunday. Football game's on TV, but they've got all sorts of TVs.
Sure.
And right beside it, there was a women's volleyball game on, and I was sort of paying attention to it in between, and I just assumed it was a U.S. college game, and I looked at it a little closer, and it was a professional league, and the television production of it looked great. The quality of the play looked amazing. And I'll be honest, I wasn't really aware. I mean, I've heard of the top players going to Europe. Fill us in on this, and what sort of professional opportunities are there for top players once they finish youth sports on the female side right now?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few kind of starts and stops with a professional league in North America through the U.S. Back in 1989, we played a team called the Minnesota Monarchs. It was like the initial pro league that was introduced to the U.S. It was short-lived, however. But as on a note of trivia there, we went to Minneapolis to play this team, and who did I meet but none other than Nick Bockwinkel, which I'm sure you'll appreciate.
Come on.
Yes, because he was part of this group that was bringing this team, of all people,
Former AWA World Heavyweight Champion for you old wrestling heads out there.
You know it. Him and Ray the Crippler's Demons. Come on. You got to know your wrestling trivia, Andrew. But anyway, so there have been lots of starts and stops. And so this one has finally kind of taken hold. And I know a lot of the players that have traditionally from the U.S. national team gone and played in Europe, they're really excited about the chance to just stay home and play. So it's early days for that league. I don't know what they're paying them, but they're paying them enough to stay home. And the top players in Europe are still making a lot of really good money. I mean, some of them are making 200,000 euros a year. That's a lot of money. And obviously Europe is still where the top players do play. And there's all kinds of levels of pro volleyball, and I'm not familiar with each and every one of them. I know we have some players on our team that certainly have the potential, and some of them will, I'm sure, go and play professionally, having played with a bit of national team over the past few years. So we'll see what it brings, but it's super exciting. I watch it on TV every time I get a chance to see how things are going. I recognize a lot of faces from U.S. college. I follow that closely in that I go often to the coaching clinics there, and you're always looking for other levels of play to see what you can do better on your own team, obviously. So it's cool, and I really hope that it takes a foothold in the U.S. It'd be super exciting.
Well, we're seeing, I think, as as we progress and women's sports continues to get more opportunity and more attention, and we've seen what's happened with the WNBA. Obviously, the PWHL had an incredible first year last year, and it grows. We are seeing more professional opportunities for women, and it is certainly a great thing. You're more worried about the here and now, though, for your club. You've won 14 in a row. You got nationals coming up, but we're in Canada West playoffs right now, hosting Mount Royal. Fill us in on Thursday, Friday at Investors Group Athletic Center, 6 p.m. The challenge coming up for your club is you want to, keep it rolling heading into the big tournament here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, it is the best of three. Obviously, we have to beat a really capable Mount Royal team. They're one of the teams we didn't play this year in league. There's 3 teams we didn't play. They were one of them. So, we're familiar with the team. They've got a new coach there, but a lot of the players are similar. So they're not completely new for us, but we have yet to play them formally. We played them in a scrimmage like in September, which feels like a lifetime ago, which doesn't count for much of anything. So here we are. They're capable. They're athletic. One of their middle kids played on the next gen national team. So, yeah, they're physical and good teams. So we'll have to be prepared to to throw down and beat a good team.
Now, in addition to the playoff action this weekend, as I mentioned, I believe March 14th it gets going. Women's volleyball nationals. Like for folks that have seen some volleyball, just give people an idea about the quality of competition and play we're going to get here in Winnipeg, as you mentioned, for the first time since the start of the century.
Yeah. I mean, if we're able to make the Final Four, that means there'll be 4 teams from Canada West that will be at this year's championship. And, traditionally, Canada West teams have been the teams to beat. History would suggest the same. I think in the last 40-odd years, only 2 teams have not won the national championship from this conference. So obviously, you teams that we've already played, we're going to have to play and beat again to win the dang thing. So, the teams will be at their best. And so every round will have a Canada West team in it. So they're going to see the best of what we have to offer, which is pretty good. I mean, the level of volleyball has never been higher in youth sport, for sure. And that, a great deal of that goes back to club volleyball and how massive it is. Volleyball Canada National Championships, there's 800 teams plus that are competing. So obviously, the amount of players we have to draw from has increased exponentially several times over. Coaching is better at an early age. You're playing better volleyball at an earlier age, like the whole evolution of it. I don't think that the inherent qualities required to win have changed. That's kind of been a true constant. But certainly the level of athleticism and the quality of play, the level of play has gone up for sure. It's what we're playing now is not what we played back when I first got the job here in 1986, 87. And we made the national final that first year. So, we're a far cry from that.
You've seen it all. With hopefully we'll see you hold another trophy with your club in a few weeks for nationals. And in a lot of ways, I guess, you spoke to how stacked Canada West is. Running the gauntlet through the Canada West playoffs, probably the perfect way to get ready for the national championship at home.
Yeah, it does. It certainly steals your game, and it's, we won Canada West last year, right? First time we'd ever won. People are shocked, like, what? Like we've been in lots of finals and we'd won national championships without winning Canada West. It just tells you how hard it is, to win your own conference, never mind winning a national championship. So, yeah, the road goes through this conference, but it's also great, though. I mean, we get to play the best teams every weekend. Other conferences would take umbrage to that to a degree, obviously. But the results can't really be denied, ultimately in the end. So what I've always said is this, Andrew, we can play really well and still lose. But if we play poorly, we will lose. That is what this conference is. And I think it's true for every sport.
Well, the standard's high. You've won 14 in a row heading into the quarterfinals this week against Mount Royal. Again, folks, if you want to see some incredible volleyball action ahead of the Nationals, Thursday and Friday, Investors Group Athletic Center, and then Markdown Women's Volleyball Nationals beginning on March 14th at the University of Manitoba. And we'll wish the hosts well, Ken. Good luck this weekend, and we'll be paying attention to what you and the girls can do heading into the big national championships. Continued success and all the best.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you, Andrew. Cheers.
Thanks so much. Reminding me of the Mark Scheifele franchise goal awaiting to be scored. That one cashed at plus 105. And I waited on the Jets. I mean, there's no way we were going to hit a minus 500 favorite. However, live betting them at plus 175 in the third period was a nice move because it certainly paid off. But, we hit our TGL. I'm not, Remis, have you watched any of the TGL yet?
It's funny. I haven't watched it, but people are sending me videos of it and are saying, wow, what is this? This is really interesting. This is kind of cool. So, and I hear you talking about all the time with Feinberg. So, and on this show, seems to be getting some traction.
It's neat. It's really unique. The characters of the players come out way more than they do in sort of the stuffy rounds on the PGA Tour. There's a shot clock. The technology is really cool. Like I really enjoyed it. But yesterday we had at Coolbet, we had a 3-gamer for the TGL yesterday and today, and there was also a 2-gamer. And we had LA, which had Tony Finau joined Morikawa, and I'm trying to remember who the other player was. Max Homa, maybe? Anyways, they were down 4-0. I left to the game. It was 4-1. And as I was going into the rink, the Lock Shop group chat exploded. They ended up coming all the way back. There's like a hammer where you can double the points on a hole. They got that. And then the overtime is a chip off, which they won. And then Atlanta won, which is our play of the day. So we're riding. We just need the Bay tonight for a 3-for-3. And then we hit our partner parlay last night on that Kevin Fiala goal late. Kings over and Kevin Fiala. So we're riding a bit of a hot streak right now. Now, there's a ton of games tonight in the National Hockey League. I'll give you a quick rundown of them and then let you know what we cooked up in the exclusives. Leafs are minus 154 faves in Boston against the Bruins. The Sabres minus 192 favorites at home against the Ducks. Ducks are actually like 7-1-2 in their last 10. I'm not sure if that number makes sense. You never know what you're getting from the Sabres, that's for sure. Dallas minus 189 in Columbus against the Blue Jackets. Carolina's minus 213 in Montreal. The Flyers are a minus 120 home favorite against Pittsburgh. The Capitals minus 200 favorites against Calgary. Rangers and Islanders going at it. Rangers a slight road fave, minus 116 on the island. Edmonton and Tampa was a pick 'em earlier. Now Tampa's a very slight favorite at minus 111. The Wild are taking on Detroit. Joel Eriksson Ek out from Minnesota. Kaprizov's still on the IR. It's amazing that Minnesota, I'll give them credit. Can't stand them, but I'll give them credit. With the record that they have, with the injuries, not to mention the salary cap issues they have. This is going to be a tough one for them at home, though. And on the other side, our old pal Andrew Kopp out for the season as well with Detroit. Minnesota's minus 116. The Panthers are in Nashville. Panthers minus 159. No Matthew Tkachuk. Predators plus 135. I might actually sprinkle the Preds tonight as a home dog. Won't be putting them in any parlays, though. The Blues minus 143 at home against the Kraken. And then Utah minus 270 at home against the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, if you go to the main page, you'll see our lock shop parlay. We've got the Rangers in New York against the Islanders, or on Long Island, I should say. We're going to take Detroit over Minnesota. The loss of Eriksson Ek is a big one for Minnesota. He does so many things for them. Detroit's in a wild card spot. They've been playing well. We'll go with Detroit on the road, and then we'll take St. Louis at home against the Seattle Kraken. And that number's actually gone up a little bit because the Blues line's gone down, plus 609 right now on the combo cards, boosted from plus 529. Dusty does these funny ones. Dusty's Undies, where he takes a bunch of unders. He's got under in the Islanders Rangers, under 7.5, under 7.5 in the Wild Red Wings, and under 7.5 in the Blues Kraken game. So basically the games that we picked for the partner parlay, Dusty's boosting it to 7 and taking under in all of those games. Obviously the Lamplighters there tonight. We got a Sid and Ovi prop, a point for Sid and a point for Ovi, boosted to plus 126. And then the Bay. The Bay is the team they're playing against, Tigers team, who's been pretty ugly this year in the TGL. Patty, I know Pat Gregoire named this, the Bay Hive. The Bay to win, and then Warriors minus 16.5. There's a DGen Den parlay by the Lock Shoppers from the Discord. And then, hey, if you're still believing that the Jets and Oilers are on a collision course, as we've been hoping for all year long, you can get the Lock Shop Bowl. Jets to make the conference finals. Oilers to make the conference finals, boosted from plus 725 to plus 825. One other thing, I don't talk a lot of hoops. I'll pay attention to it more than NFL has done. But tonight, Remis, could be one of the all-time revenge game spots. Luka Doncic playing against the Dallas Mavericks as an LA Laker for the first time. It is in LA. The Lakers are a big favorite. But his point total is 30.5, and I think people are hammering the over.
Yeah, I heard it hasn't been going well for him early on, but obviously there's some...
He apparently had a monster game on Saturday against the Nuggets, who are a really good team. But other than that, has been done. I kind of thought that there was a lot of hype, and I did the contrarian play and took the under on Luka Doncic. But I know there are a lot of people that will be riding that over, because the over is minus 130 at 30.5. And Luka does seem to have the killer instinct, and I have a feeling he's going to want to make a statement tonight. It'll be interesting to see how that one goes.
Yeah, well, they didn't sign him to that Supermax. Cost him some money. Abruptly
a lot.
Traded him. I mean, I think it ended up okay going to LA Lakers, but what a day that was. I mean, you had to check your phone like 3 times to see if it was a real tweet. That was crazy.
Yeah, no, I remember looking at my phone in Costa Rica and thinking, this is fake. Right after I finished watching the Royal Rumble, in fact. So anyways, I will remember that one for a while. One other one, I'll just tease you for the folks that hung around. The Lock Shot Play of the Day that I've put out that'll be on the socials later on. Remis, check this one out. Barrett Hayden from the Utah HC. Over 2.5 shots. He's gone over 2.5 in 5 of his last 7 games. They are home to the Chicago Blackhawks, and the over 2.5 is plus 148.
I like it. I'm in.
I liked it too. I think it's great value on that one. So that's what we're playing today. Head on over to coolbet.com. If you haven't played there before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. And check the exclusives and the combo cards right at the front for some special things that we've cooked up with some nice boosted odds over at Coolbet. Lots of hockey to watch tonight. I'm going to check out the TGL and see if we can catch this 3-gamer. And then back at it tomorrow, Remo, with the game day edition. I was all ready for our whiskey event on Thursday. I completely forgot that the Jets were playing tomorrow in Ottawa. Sounds like Brady Tkachuk's doubtful for the game. He left practice early today after coming back for the first time since Four Nations. But looking forward to that game in Ottawa. Maybe we'll have to check up with our old pal Alex Adams tomorrow for you to set the game up, or one of the guys there in the nation's capital. And then, of course, Thursday night, there's 5 tickets remaining. Or maybe there's some that have gone during the show. If you want to join us for the Whiskey Fest event at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame with the Jets and Preds combo watch party in the bourbon class, if you will, from Maker's Mark. Link in the description, link in the chat. Jump on those final 5 tickets. Myself, Remis, Connor would love to see you there. That's going to do it for us today. Went a little long, but it was a fun show. Great stuff with Pagnotta, Hammer, and a fun chat with Ken Bentley as well. Enjoy your night. Thanks again to all the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Have a good one, everyone, and enjoy the weather.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.